This story will help you relax and sleep peacefully. Drop where you're watching from the comments, hit like, and subscribe for the twist. The lantern flickered to life on its own, casting long, trembling shadows across the attic floor. No one had touched it in decades. The air in the attic was thick with the scent of old wood and forgotten things. Emma's fingers brushed against the dust-covered lantern, its brass surface cold despite the summer heat. She hadn't come up here looking for trouble, just old photo albums her grandmother had mentioned. But then the flame sparked inside the glass, blue and wavering, without a match, without a hand to light it. Emma jerked back, her breath catching. The light pulsed, slow and deliberate, like a heartbeat. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, twisting up the slanted walls as if trying to claw their way out. Did you find them? Her brother's voice drifted up from the stairs, footsteps creaking closer. Emma swallowed hard, her pulse thudding in her ears. "Lucas," she whispered, not taking her eyes off the lantern. Did you light this?" Lucas appeared in the doorway, his expression shifting from curiosity to confusion as his gaze landed on the unnatural glow. "No. Why would I?" The flame flared brighter, illuminating something etched into the base of the lantern. Words in a language neither of them recognized. The air grew heavier, pressing against Emma's skin like a warning. Then, from somewhere deep in the house, a floorboard groaned. Not the usual settling of an old home. Something deliberate, something moving. Lucas went still, his voice dropping low. "We're the only ones here, right?" Emma didn't answer. The lantern's flame burned steady now, unwavering, as if something had decided to keep it alive. And outside the attic window, where there should have been only darkness, a figure stood watching. Emma's fingers tightened around the lantern's handle, the metal biting into her palm. The flame inside flickered again, casting jagged shadows that slithered across the floorboards like living things. The figure outside the window didn't move, just stood there, its face obscured by the grime-streaked glass. She couldn't tell if it was looking at her or at the lantern. Lucas took a step forward, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma put it down. She wanted to. Every nerve in her body screamed at her to drop it, to back away, to run. But her hand wouldn't obey. The lantern felt like it had fused to her skin, its weight both too heavy and too light, as if it wasn't entirely real. Then the figure outside tilted its head. A sharp crack echoed through the attic as the window latch snapped open on its own. Cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of damp earth and something older, something rotten. The flame inside the lantern flared violently, painting the walls in shifting blues and blacks. Lucas grabbed Emma's arm, his grip bruising. "We need to go. Now." She finally tore her gaze from the window and looked at him. His face was pale, his eyes wide with something she'd never seen in him before. Real fear. Lucas wasn't the type to scare easily. He was the one who laughed at horror movies, who dared her to explore abandoned houses at midnight. But whatever was happening now had stripped that bravado away. The floorboard groaned again, louder this time, followed by another, closer. Emma wrenched her arm free and stumbled back, the lantern swinging wildly in her grip. The flame didn't waver. It burned straight up unwavering, as if defying the movement. Emma. Lucas started, but a sound cut him off. A whisper, not from the window, not from the stairs, from inside the lantern. It was faint, a hissing, breathless murmur, just beneath the crackle of the flame. Emma couldn't make out the words, but she didn't need to. The intent was clear. It was calling. Lucas's breath came fast and shallow. "Do you hear that?" She nodded, unable to speak. The whispering grew louder, layering over itself until it wasn't just one voice but many, tangled together in a chorus of hunger and want. The air in the attic thickened, pressing against her eardrums like deep water. Then the figure outside moved. It lifted a hand, too long, too thin, and pressed its fingers against the glass. The pain fogged under its touch, tendrils of frost spiderwebbing across the surface. Emma's pulse pounded in her throat. "Lucas, we can't go downstairs." He followed her gaze to the window, then to the lantern, then back to her. "Why not?" "Because it's not just outside," she breathed. "It's in here with us." The whispering stopped. Silence. Then, from the darkest corner of the attic, where the lantern's light didn't reach, something shifted. A shadow peeled itself from the wall. Not a trick of the light, not a figment of fear. It moved with purpose, unfolding like smoke given form, stretching upward until it loomed over them, featureless and endless. Lucas grabbed Emma's wrist again, his fingers ice cold. Don't let go of the lantern. She didn't understand why, but she held on tighter. The flame pulsed in response, casting jagged light over the thing standing before them. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the shadow stepped forward, and the whispering began again, this time from everywhere at once. The floorboards trembled. The walls creaked. The air itself seemed to vibrate with the weight of unseen eyes watching, waiting. Emma's legs refused to move. The lantern was the only thing keeping her grounded, its flame a fragile barrier between them and whatever was coming. Lucas swallowed hard. We have to get out of here. She wanted to agree, but the shadow was spreading now, seeping across the floor, reaching for them with tendrils of darkness. And the figure at the window was smiling. Emma couldn't see its face, but she knew. The lantern's flame flickered one last time, then went out. Darkness swallowed them whole. The darkness was absolute. Emma couldn't see Lucas beside her, couldn't see her own hands clutching the lantern, couldn't even see the faintest outline of the attic window where the figure had stood watching. The blackness was suffocating, thick as oil, pressing against her skin like a living thing. Then the whispering started again, closer this time, right in her ear. She jerked away, her shoulder slamming into something solid. Lucas! He grabbed her arm, his breath ragged. Don't move. She didn't dare. The air was too still, too heavy, as if the attic itself was holding its breath. A floorboard creaked. Not beneath them. Across the room. Something was moving in the dark. Emma's fingers tightened around the lantern's handle. The metal was freezing now, so cold it burned, but she couldn't let go. The whisper slithered around them. Words just beyond understanding. Voices overlapping in a chorus of hunger and malice. Then, a scrape of nails against wood. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. Lucas's grip on her arm tightened. Emma, his voice was barely audible. We need light. She knew he was right. But the lantern's flame had died on its own. What if it wouldn't relight? What if whatever was in here with them didn't want it to? Another creak. Closer. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. She fumbled in her pocket with her free hand, fingers brushing against the cool metal of her lighter. She never smoked, but she carried out of habit a nervous tic from childhood. Now it might save them. She pulled it out, thumb trembling against the striker. One flick. Nothing. Another. A spark, but no flame. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. The thing in the dark was moving faster now. Footsteps uneven, dragging. Lucas's breath hitched. Emma, she struck the lighter again. This time, the flame caught. The tiny fire illuminated the attic in a fragile halo of light, and for one horrifying second, Emma saw it. The shadow wasn't just a shadow anymore. It had shape, form, a skeletal frame wrapped in tattered cloth, its limbs too long, fingers ending in jagged nails that scraped against the floor as it crawled toward them. Its face, if it could be called a face, was a sunken void, featureless except for a mouth stretched too wide, filled with rows of needle-thin teeth. And it was smiling. Emma's breath locked in her throat. The lighter's flame flickered, threatening to die. Then the lantern in her other hand roared back to life. Not blue this time. Red. The sudden burst of crimson light sent the thing recoiling, its mouth twisting into a silent snarl. The whispers turned to shrieks, sharp and pained, as the lantern's glow pulsed like a heartbeat, pushing the darkness back. Lucas didn't hesitate. Run. They bolted for the attic door, their footsteps pounding against the old wood. Behind them, the thing screeched, the sound tearing through the air like shattered glass. Emma didn't look back. She hit the stairs first, nearly losing her balance as she hurled herself downward, the lantern swinging wildly in her grip. The red light spilled ahead of them, staining the walls the color of old blood. The house groaned in protest, floorboards trembling as if something beneath them was stirring. Lucas grabbed her shoulder as they reached the second-floor landing. "We can't go out the front." "Why not?" "Because it's waiting for us there." Emma didn't ask how he knew. She could feel it too, a cold, crawling certainty that whatever had been at the window wasn't gone. It was just biding its time. The whispers were back, drifting up from the first floor, slithering through the halls like smoke. Lucas's jaw clenched. Back door, through the kitchen. They moved fast, their breaths coming in sharp gasps. The lantern's light flickered as they passed the hallway mirror, and for a split second, Emma saw something in the reflection that wasn't there in the hall. Figures, dozens of them, pale, hollow-eyed, their mouths moving in unison with the whispers. Then the mirror cracked, a jagged line splitting the glass, and the image was gone. The kitchen door was just ahead. Emma reached for the handle, and the lantern's flame turned black. The light didn't vanish. It inverted, casting the room in negative. Shadows became blinding white. The walls turned pitch dark. The air itself seemed to warp, pressing it on them with crushing weight. Lucas staggered, clutching his head. What the hell? Emma's vision swam. The whispers were inside her skull now, digging, burrowing, filling her mind with words she couldn't understand but knew were meant for her. The lantern was humming, a low, resonant vibration that made her bones ache. The back door was right there, but something was wrong with it. The wood was rotting, the paint peeling away in long strips, revealing something wet and pulsing beneath. The handle had melted, dripping like wax onto the floor. Lucas grabbed her arm. "Don't touch it." Emma didn't need to be told. The house was changing. The rules were shifting. And the lantern was the only thing keeping them alive. She could feel it now. A connection, thin as a thread, between her and the flame. It wasn't just light. It was a ward, a shield, and whatever was in this house wanted it. The whispers rose to a deafening crescendo. The walls trembled. The floor beneath them rippled like water. Then, from the darkness of the hallway, the thing from the attic emerged. It wasn't crawling anymore. It stood, taller than any man, its limbs stretching, joints bending in ways they shouldn't. Its mouth unhinged, wider, until its face was nothing but teeth and hunger. And it spoke. A single word, in a voice that wasn't a voice, just the sound of 100 dead things screaming at once. "Mine!" The lantern's flame surged, the black light flaring so bright it seared Emma's eyes. She screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the thing's answering shriek. Lucas yanked her backward just as the kitchen cabinets burst open, dishes shattering, silverware flying like shrapnel. They weren't going to make it to the door. The house was alive now, and it wanted them dead. The black flame roared higher, casting monstrous shadows that twisted along the walls like living things. Emma felt the heatless fire licking at her fingers, yet the metal handle remained icy cold. Lucas pulled her behind him, his back pressed against the shuddering refrigerator as the thing from the attic took another shuddering step forward. "Think!" Lucas shouted over the cacophony of breaking glass and splintering wood. "Grandma must have known about this thing. There's got to be something." The creature's head snapped toward him at the mention of their grandmother. Its gaping maw stretched wider, strings of black saliva stretching between needle-like teeth. The whispers coalesced into a single, guttural voice that seemed to come from the walls themselves. "Liar! Thief!" she promised. Emma's breath came in short, panicked gasps. The lantern grew heavier in her hands, its light pulsing in time with her racing heartbeat. She subtly understood. The lantern wasn't just protecting them. It was feeding on them, on her fear, her life. The kitchen tiles beneath their feet began to crack, thin tendrils of something dark and viscous oozing up through the fissures. Lucas grabbed a cast-iron skillet from the rack, his knuckles white around the handle. "Emma, when I say go." The creature lunged. Lucas swung with all his strength. The skillet connected with a sickening crunch, sending the thing reeling back. Its hollow scream shook the remaining dishes in her shelves in a cascade of shattering porcelain. "Now!" Emma didn't hesitate. She turned and ran toward the pantry, the only exit not blocked by the spreading black ooze. The small room was pitch dark except for the lantern's eerie glow, revealing shelves of preserves that had long since spoiled, their glass jars clouded with age and something else. Faint shapes moving inside. The back wall of the pantry was different than she remembered. The wood paneling had warped, forming what looked like a narrow passage just wide enough to squeeze through. From somewhere beyond it came a faint, familiar scent. Their grandmother's rose perfume. Lucas. Here. He stumbled in after her, his shirt torn where the creature's claws had grazed him. Dark stains spread through the fabric, too thick to be just blood. The thing shrieked behind them, its two long fingers scrabbling at the pantry doorframe. Emma plunged into the passage, the wood pressing uncomfortably against her shoulders. The lantern's light revealed strange markings carved into walls, symbols that made her eyes water as she looked at them too long. The air grew colder with each step, their breath fogging in the dim red light. After what felt like an eternity of squeezing through the ever-narrowing space, they spilled out into a room that shouldn't exist. Emma recognized it immediately from childhood stories. The secret study Grandma had always joked about but never shown them. The circular room was lined with shelves of ancient books, their spines cracked with age. A massive oak desk dominated the center, its surface covered in yellow papers and strange brass instruments. But most disturbing were the dozens of lanterns hanging from the ceiling, all identical to the one in Emma's hands, all dark and covered in dust. Lucas leaned heavily against the desk, his face pale. She knew. All this time, she knew. Emma approached the desk, her fingers brushing against an open journal. The page showed a detailed sketch of the lantern, surrounded by frantic notes in their grandmother's distinctive handwriting. One phrase stood out, underlined 3 times in red ink. The flame chooses. The taker become the keepers. A sudden crash from the passageway made them both start. The creature was coming, its progress marked by the splintering of wood and a new sound. Wet, gurgling laughter. Emma frantically flipped through the journal, her eyes scanning the cramped writing. There's something here about binding, about closing the door. Lucas grabbed a rusted iron rod from the desk, hefting it like a weapon. Whatever you're going to do it fast. The first signs of the creature appear at the passage entrance, those terrible fingers curling around the warped doorframe. The whispers returned, louder now, chanting in some guttural tongue that made Emma's teeth ache. Her eyes fell on a particular passage in the journal. Only the chosen keeper may relight the true flame. All others are but echoes in the glass. Emma looked down at the lantern in her hands, then at the dark ones hanging above. A terrible understanding dawned on her. These weren't just copies. They were prisons. The creature's had emerged from the passageway, its neck stretching impossibly long as it sniffed the air. Its hollow eyes fixed on the lantern in Emma's hands, and it smiled. Little keeper, it rasped in a voice like dry leaves crumbling. You burn so bright. Lucas swung the iron rod, but the creature caught it effortlessly, the metal bending like clay in its grasp. With a casual flick of its wrist, it sent Lucas crashing into bookshelves, volumes cascading down around him. Emma backed away until she hit the desk, the journal pressing against her back. The lantern's flame burned hotter now, the glass growing warm against her skin for the first time. She could feel something stirring inside it, not just a flame, but something else, something watching. The creature advanced, its movements jerky and unnatural. Give it to me, it crooned. You don't know what you hold, what you waste. Emma's fingers found the journal's last page behind her. Without looking, she traced the final words carved deep into the paper. Light the others. A desperate plan formed in her mind. As the creature reached for her, she ducked beneath its grasping arms and ran to the nearest hanging lantern. With a quick motion, she touched her lantern's flame to the darkened wick. Nothing happened. The creature laughed, a sound like breaking bones. Foolish child. Only the... Emma turned to the second lantern, then the third, moving faster as the creature gave chase. Each time, the flame refused to catch. The creature swiped at her, its claws tearing through her sleeve but missing flesh by inches. Lucas stirred amidst the fallen books, his hand closing around a shard of broken glass. With a grunt of effort, he hurled it at the creature's face. The thing screamed as the glass embedded itself in one hollow eye socket, black ichor oozing down its sunken cheek. Emma reached the last lantern just as the creature recovered. She knew this was her final chance. Instead of trying to light it normally, she did the one thing that felt right. She tilted her lantern upside down, pouring a single drop of the strange, shimmering fuel onto the dead wick. The effect was instantaneous. The lantern flared to life with a deafening whoosh, its flame burning pure white. The creature howled, clutching at its face as if struck by invisible hands. All around the room, the other lanterns began to rattle on their hooks, their glass chiming like distant bells. Emma didn't wait to see what would happen next. She grabbed Lucas's arm and pulled him toward what she hoped was an exit, a narrow spiral staircase leading down into darkness. As they fled downward, the sound from above grew more frenzied, shattering glass, splintering wood, and beneath it all, that terrible, endless whispering. The stairs seemed to descend far deeper than the house's structure should allow, the steps growing colder beneath their feet. The air took on a dank, earthy smell, like a long-sealed tomb. The lantern's light, now returned to its eerie blue, revealed strange carvings on the walls, depictions of robed figures holding lanterns aloft, their faces twisted in agony. Lucas's breathing was labored now, his steps uneven. The wound on his shoulder had begun to smoke faintly, the edges of the torn fabric blackening as it burned from within. He gripped Emma's arm with increasing desperation. "Something's wrong," he gasped. "It's inside me. I can feel it." The staircase ended abruptly at a heavy oak door banded with iron. The same symbols from the study were carved deep into its surface, filled with some tarnished metal that might have once been silver. From beyond it came a sound that froze Emma's blood, the faint, unmistakable crying of a child. Lucas's eyes had taken on a glassy sheen. His pupils dilated until only a thin ring of color remained. "Don't open it," he whispered, though his fingers twitched toward the handle. "That's not a child. That's never been a child." Emma reached for the door anyway, compelled by some instinct she couldn't name. As her fingers brushed the cold iron, the lantern's flame turned a sickly green, casting their faces in ghastly relief. The crying beyond the door stopped abruptly. Then something scratched softly at the other side. 3 slow, deliberate rasps of claws against wood. Then silence. The scratching stopped. Emma's hand hovered over the iron door handle, her fingers trembling. The lantern's sickly green light pulsed like a dying heartbeat, throwing long, wavering shadows across the stone walls. Lucas stood rigid beside her, his breath coming in shallow, uneven gasps. The wound on his shoulder had darkened, tendrils of inky blackness spiderwebbing beneath his skin, creeping toward his collarbone. "Don't," he whispered again, but his voice was wrong, too deep, too layered, as if something else spoke through him. The silence beyond the door was worse than the crying had been. It was the silence of something waiting, listening. Emma swallowed hard and pressed her ear against the wood. A slow, wet exhale seeped through the cracks, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and rotting flowers. Then, tap, a single, deliberate knock from the other side. Emma jerked back, her pulse roaring in her ears. The lantern's flame flickered violently, the glass rattling in its frame. Lucas's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. His grip was fever-hot, his fingers twitching as if something beneath his skin fought to move them. "It's lying," he choked out. "It's not what it—" His words cut off with a gasp as his back arched suddenly, his free hand clawing at his throat. His eyes rolled back, the whites now veined with black. "Lucas." Emma dropped the lantern to catch him as his knees buckled. It hit the stone floor with a clang, but didn't break, the flame inside flaring bright enough to sear after-images into her vision. The door creaked, just a fraction, just enough for a sliver of darkness to show through the gap. Emma froze, Lucas's dead weight sagging against her. The air grew thick, heavy, pressing down on them like a physical weight. The lantern's light dimmed, the green leaching away until only a dull, lifeless gray remained. Then, from the other side of the door, a child's voice. "Help me." It was small, broken, the voice of a child who had been crying for a very, very long time. Emma's breath hitched. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to drag Lucas back up the stairs, to get out of this house and never look back. But beneath the fear, something else stirred, a terrible, gnawing recognition. She knew that voice. She had heard it before, in dreams, in the static between radio stations, in the hollow spaces of her grandmother's house, when no one else was around. Lucas suddenly went still in her arms. When she looked down, his eyes were open again, but they weren't his anymore. The pupils had swallowed the irises whole, leaving only pits of endless black. His lips parted, and the voice that came out wasn't his. Asterisk, you should have left the lantern in the attic. Asterisk, the door groaned, the iron band straining as something pressed against it from the other side. It was splintered along the edges, long cracks racing through grain like lightning. Emma grabbed the lantern and scrambled back, dragging Lucas with her. His body was limp, his skin waxy and cold. The thing using his voice laughed, a sound like rusted hinges screaming. The door burst open, not with a crash, but with a slow, inevitable surrender, as if the wood had simply given up trying to hold back what was on the other side. The room beyond was pitch black, not empty, not dark, full. Emma's breath fogged in the sudden, gelid air. The lantern's flame guttered, the glass frosting over. Shapes moved in the darkness, shifting, reaching, their outlines blurring at the edges like ink in water. And at the center of it all, a small figure stood silhouetted against the void. A child, its head tilted slowly, too far to the left, the motion unnatural, wrong. Its arms hung limp at its sides, fingers curled like dead spiders. It took a single step forward, and the floorboards squelched beneath its bare feet. The voice that came from it was no longer a child's. Asterisk, you took what was mine. Asterisk, the lantern in Emma's hand screamed. Not a sound. A vibration, a shudder that raced up her arms and into her bones, rattling her teeth. The glass grew hot, then cold, then hot again, the flame inside lashing like a trapped animal. Lucas's body convulsed. His back arched off the ground, his mouth stretching wider than humanly possible as a choked, guttural noise tore from his throat. The black veins beneath his skin pulsed, spreading. The child thing took another step. The darkness behind it breathed. Emma's vision swam. The lantern was pulling at her now, not just in her hands but in her mind, whispering things she couldn't understand but knew were important. The journal's words echoed in her skull. Asterisk the flame chooses. The taken become the keepers. Asterisk. The child thing reached for her. Emma did the only thing she could think of. She threw the lantern. It spun through the air, end over end, the flame inside blazing suddenly white-hot. The child thing shrieked, a sound that shattered the remaining glass in the stairwell and sent cracks racing up the stone walls. The lantern struck the thing square in the chest. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the world unfolded. The darkness split. The child thing's form ruptured, its flesh peeling back like wet paper to reveal something beneath, something vast and hungry and old. The lantern's flame surged, latching on the thing like a living thing, spreading across its skin in liquid ribbons of fire. The screams that followed were not human. Emma grabbed Lucas and ran. The stairs moved beneath her, the steps twisting, rising up to meet her feet as if the house itself was trying to help her escape. Behind her, the fire roared, the light painting the walls and frenzied, flickering shadows that twitched like dying things. She didn't look back. She couldn't. The air grew hotter, thicker, the scent of burning flesh and something sweet, like rotting fruit left too long in the sun. Lucas's body was a dead weight in her arms, his skin now cold as marble. She could hear the thing behind her, asterisk feel asterisk it. The fire not killing it but changing it, reshaping it into something even worse. The attic stairs loomed ahead, the study door hanging crooked on its hinges. The other lanterns, the prisons, swayed violently on their hooks, their glass chiming like funeral bells. Emma stumbled into the study, her legs giving out as she collapsed beside the desk. Lucas's body hit the floor with a thud, his head lolling to the side. His eyes were still open, still black, but his lips moved. "It's not over," he whispered, and the lanterns all lit at once. Every single one. Their flames burned a dozen different colors, red, blue, green, hues that had no name, casting the room in a kaleidoscope of nightmare light. The shadows they cast didn't move with the flames. They moved on their own, and they were looking at her. Emma's breath came in ragged, sobbing gasps. The journal lay where she'd left it, its pages fluttering as if in a breeze, though the air was perfectly still. The last page was now visible. A single sentence, written in fresh, dripping ink. Asterisk, the keeper becomes a kept. Asterisk, then the floor gave way beneath her, and Emma fell. Emma's stomach lurched as she plunged into darkness. The scream ripped from her throat before she could stop it. The fall lasted seconds and eternity all at once, the air whistling past her ears like ghostly whispers. She braced for impact, but when it came, there was no bone-shattering crash. Only a sudden, jarring stop as something caught her. Not ground, not hands. Something cold and wet and pulsing. She gasped, struggling against the slick tendrils wrapping around her limbs. The darkness here was absolute, thicker than any night, pressing against her eyes like physical weight. The scent of damp earth and rotting meat filled her nose, making her gag. Then light, a single, flickering glow in the distance. The lantern, her lantern, it floated in the void, its flame burning a sickly phosphorescent green. The glass was cracked, webbed with fractures that pulsed like veins. Shadows moved within the flame itself, twisting shapes that reached for her. A wet, slithering sound came from beneath her. Emma looked down. She wasn't standing on anything solid. The ground, if it could be called ground, was alive. A mass of writhing, blackened tendrils, studded with half-formed faces that moaned silently as they pressed against the surface. Their mouths stretched in endless screams. One of the faces turned toward her. Its eyes opened. Grandma's eyes. Emma recoiled, but the tendrils held her fast. The face in the ground contorted, lips peeling back from teeth that were too sharp, too many. When it spoke, the voice was Grandma's, but wrong, layered with something ancient and hungry. You shouldn't have come back, little Ember. The lantern's flame flared in response, the light revealing more of the nightmare around her. The walls, if they could be called walls, were made of fused bodies, their limbs tangled together in a grotesque tapestry of suffering. Some were fresh, their skin still pink. Others were little more than bone and rot. All of them twitched as the light touched them. A choked sound to her left made Emma turn. Lucas hung suspended in the tendrils a few feet away, his body limp, his head lolling forward. The black veins had spread across his entire face now, pulsing beneath the skin like parasitic worms. His fingers twitched, nails blackened and cracked. Lucas. Emma strained against her bonds, but the more she struggled, the tighter they became. The tendrils burrowed into her skin, not breaking it but sinking beneath, merging with her flesh in a way that made her stomach heave. The lantern drifted closer, its cracked glass reflecting not Emma's face, but dozens of faces, all overlapping, all screaming. The grandma thing in the ground laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. He's not yours anymore. The lantern takes what it's owed. Emma's breath came in short, panicked gasps. The tendrils were inside her now, threading through muscle, wrapping around bone. She could feel them probing her memories, her fears, drinking her in like a sponge. The lantern was right in front of her face now. Inside the flame, something moved. A shape, a hand, pressing against the glass from within. Emma's blood turned to ice. The hand was hers. The grandma thing's grin widened, splitting its face in two. The keeper becomes the kept. The lantern's flame suddenly roared, the glass cracking further. The hand inside pushed harder, fingers bending at impossible angles to squeeze through the fractures. Emma thrashed, but was no use. The tendrils held her firm, forcing her closer to the lantern, closer to the thing inside wearing her face. Lucas's head snapped up suddenly, his black eyes fixed on her. When he spoke, his voice was a chorus, 100 voices layered together, some screaming, some laughing, some begging. Light the way, keeper. The hand burst through the glass. Emma screamed as cold fingers closed around her throat. The world exploded in pain and light. And then, silence. Emma opened her eyes. She was standing in the attic. The real attic. Dust motes floated in the afternoon sunlight, streaming through the window. The lantern sat innocently on the floor in front of her, its glass intact, its flame a soft, steady blue. No tendrils. No grandma thing. No Lucas. Emma staggered back, her hands flying to her throat. No marks. No pain. Just a memory of cold fingers squeezing. A floorboard creaked behind her. She turned slowly. Lucas stood in the doorway, his face pale but normal, his eyes clear. He frowned at her. "Emma, you okay? You've been up here for hours." Emma's mouth went dry. "Hours?" "Yeah, you said you were just grabbing the photo albums, and..." He stopped, his gaze dropping to the lantern. His expression darkened. "Where did you find that?" Emma followed his stare. The lantern sat between them, its flame flickering gently. Then she noticed something she hadn't before. The base was warm, and beneath her fingers, carved into the metal, were two words. "Help me." Lucas took a step forward, his hand outstretched. "Emma, don't touch again." The lantern's flame turned black, and the attic door slammed shut behind him. The slam of the attic door echoed like a gunshot in confined space. Lucas whirled toward the sound, his shoulder connecting hard with the wood as he grabbed the handle and twisted. It didn't budge. Emma's breath hitched. The lantern's black flame cast no light. Instead, it seemed to devour it, making the shadows in the corners of the attic stretch unnaturally long. The temperature plummeted, their exhales frosting in the sudden chill. Lucas abandoned the door and turned back to her, his eyes wide. "What the hell is happening?" Emma opened her mouth to answer, but the words died in her throat. Behind Lucas, the shadows moved. Not the swaying dance of flickering light. A deliberate, sinuous uncoiling. They peeled away from the walls, taking shape, forming something tall and emaciated with too many joints in its limbs. The darkness where its face should have been yawned like a void. Lucas saw the terror in Emma's expression and turned. The thing lunged. Emma didn't think. She grabbed the lantern and hurled it at the creature. The glass shattered against its chest, the black flame erupting outward in a wave of inky tendrils that wrapped around the shadow beast like chains. It shrieked, a sound that vibrated through Emma's teeth, and thrashed as the darkness of the flame consumed it. For a heartbeat, the attic was still. Then the lantern's pieces rattled against the floorboards. The shattered glass shivered, then began sliding back together, fragments stitching themselves into place as if time were reversing. The flame, once more blue and docile, flickered to life inside the repaired lantern. Lucas made a choked noise. "That's not possible." Emma didn't answer. Her gaze was locked on the lantern's base, where the words "help me" had been carved. Now, beneath it, another phrase had appeared. Asterisk, "you're next." Asterisk. A floorboard creaked behind them. Emma spun. The attic was no longer empty. Dozens of figures stood motionless between the stacks of old furniture and boxes, their faces obscured by thick, swirling shadows. They didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood, watching. Lucas grabbed Emma's wrist, his fingers ice cold. "We need to get out of here." She nodded. But even as she took a step toward the window, the figures shifted, not to stop her, just turning their heads in unison, following her movement. The lantern's flame pulsed, and the nearest figure stepped forward. Not a shadow, not a monster. A person, a woman, her face gaunt, her eyes hollow. She wore tattered clothes that might have been fashionable decades ago. When she spoke, her voice was a dry rasp, like pages turning in an old book. "You can't leave," she said. "Not while it's still hungry." Emma's pulse pounded in her throat. "What is it?" The woman's lips peeled back in a smile that showed too many teeth. "The first keeper." The lantern's flame flared, and for a fraction of a second, the light revealed the truth. The figures weren't standing at all. They were hanging, ropes around their necks, their feet dangling inches above the ground. Then the vision was gone, and they were just people again. Lucas pulled Emma toward the window, his grip bruising. "We're leaving. Now." The woman laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You can try." Emma didn't wait. She yanked the window open, the wood groaning in protest. Cold night air rushed in, carrying the scent of damp earth. The roof sloped sharply just beyond the sill, the ground far below. Lucas didn't hesitate. He swung one leg over the sill, then the other, his shoes scrabbling for purchase on the shingles. Come on. Emma turned back for one last look at the attic. The figures were closer now, their movements jerky, unnatural. The woman reached for her, fingers curled like claws. Emma clambered out after Lucas, the rough shingles biting into her palms. The wind howled around them, threatening to knock them off balance as they half slid, half crawled toward the edge of the roof. A thud from inside made them both freeze. The window had slammed shut behind them. Then, slowly, the latch turned. Lucas cursed and grabbed Emma's hand. Jump! They leaped just as the window burst open behind them. Emma hit the ground hard, the impact driving the air from her lungs. Lucas landed beside her with a grunt, immediately rolling to his feet and hauling her up. The house loomed above them, its windows dark. Then, one by one, the lights inside flicked on. First the attic, then the second floor, then the first, as if something was walking through the house, room by room, coming for them. Lucas tugged Emma toward the car. Move. She ran, her legs burning, her breath ragged. The night seemed to press in around them, the trees lining the driveways swaying despite the lack of wind. Ahead, the car was just where they'd left it. The moment Lucas's hand touched the door handle, the radio inside crackled to life, blaring static at full volume. Then, beneath the noise, a voice. Asterisk, you forgot something. Asterisk. Emma turned. The lantern sat in the middle of the driveway behind them, its flame burning a steady, patient blue. Lucas swore and yanked the car door open. Get in. Emma didn't argue. She threw herself into the passenger seat as Lucas jammed the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, the headlights cutting through the darkness. The lantern was gone. Emma scanned the driveway, her heart pounding, where a thump on the roof made them both jump. Then another, and another, like footsteps, moving from the trunk toward the windshield. Lucas slammed the car into reverse and peeled backward, then jerked the wheel, sending the car into a skid. Whatever was on the roof lost its balance with a screech, tumbling into the darkness. He didn't wait to see if it got up. The tires screamed as he threw the car into drive and accelerated down the driveway. Emma gripped the dashboard, her knuckles white. What the hell was that? Lucas's jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscle twitching. I don't know, but we're not going back to find out. The radio hissed, the static resolving into a whisper. Asterisk, you'll have to. Asterisk. Emma reached over and turned it off. The road ahead was empty, the trees forming a tunnel of shadows in the headlights. Then, in the middle of the lane, something glowed. The lantern. Lucas swore and swerved, barely missing it. Emma twisted in her seat, watching as the lantern shrank in the distance, its flame burning brighter, hotter. Then, with a sound like a sigh, it went out. The darkness that followed was absolute, and in that darkness, something laughed. The laughter lingered in the air long after the lantern's light vanished, clinging to the interior of the car like a bad smell. Emma's hands trembled against the dashboard, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps that fogged the windshield. The headlights carved a tunnel through the oppressive darkness, but the road ahead seemed to stretch endlessly, the trees pressing in from both sides like silent spectators. Lucas's grip on the steering wheel was white-knuckled, his shoulders rigid. We're not stopping, he muttered, more to himself than to Emma. Not for anything. A shape darted across the road ahead. Too fast to make out, just a blur of movement at the edge of the headlight's reach. Lucas didn't slow down. The tires thumped over something soft, and for a horrible moment, Emma imagined flesh giving way beneath them. But when she glanced back, the road was empty. The radio crackled to life again, the dial twisting on its own. Static gave way to a faint rhythmic sound, a heartbeat, slow and steady. Then a voice, whispering directly into the silence between them. Asterisk, you can't outrun it. Asterisk. Emma lunged for the radio, jamming her fingers against the power button. It didn't respond. The volume climbed higher, the heartbeat growing louder until it filled the car, vibrating through the seats, through their bones. Lucas's breath hitched. His fingers twitched against the wheel, his knuckles stark against the skin. The black veins from before had returned, creeping up his neck like cracks in porcelain. He didn't seem to notice. Emma reached for him, her fingers brushing his arm. Lucas. He flinched away, his eyes darting to hers. For a split second, his pupils dilated, swallowing the irises whole. Then he blinked, and they were normal again. "I'm fine," he said too quickly. "Just keep watching the road." Emma hesitated, then turned back to the windshield. The road was gone. In its place stood the house, their grandmother's house, looming directly ahead. Its windows glowed with that same unnatural light. The car was speeding straight for it, the headlights reflecting off the front door like a beacon. Lucas slammed on the brakes. The tires screeched, the smell of burning rubber filling the car as they skidded to a stop just inches from the porch steps. The engine died with a shudder, the headlights flickering out. Silence settled over them, heavy and suffocating. Emma's pulse roared in her ears. This wasn't possible. They'd driven for miles. They should have been far from here. Lucas exhaled sharply, his breath fogging the windshield. "It's not real," he said, his voice low. "It can't be." The front door creaked open. A figure stood in the doorway, backlit by the golden glow of the house's interior. Tall, familiar, Grandma, except it wasn't. The thing wearing her skin smiled, its lips stretching too wide, revealing teeth filed to sharp points. "You forgot something," it said, its voice a perfect mimicry of their grandmother's. In its hand, the lantern swung gently, its flame burning black once more. Lucas made a sound deep in his throat, something between a whimper and a snarl. His fingers dug into the steering wheel hard enough to make the plastic creak. The black veins pulsed beneath his skin, spreading toward his jaw. Emma's mouth went dry. She reached for the door handle, her fingers brushing cold metal. The thing in the doorway tilted its head. Now, it chided. "No leaving yet. The story isn't over." The car doors locked with a series of deafening clicks. Emma jerked at the handle, but it didn't budge. The windows fogged over, the glass frosting beneath her fingertips. Outside, the thing that wasn't their grandmother stepped off the porch, its movements fluid, unnatural. The lantern's light spilled ahead of it, illuminating the ground in oily, shifting patterns. Lucas's breathing was ragged now, his chest rising and falling too fast. He clawed at his own throat, his nails leaving red trails in their wake. "It's inside me," he gasped. It's talking to me." Emma grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. His pupils were fully black again, his skin feverish to the touch. "Fight it," she hissed. "Whatever it's saying, it's lying." Lucas's lips peeled back from his teeth in a grimace. "It's not lying," he whispered. "It's showing me things. Things I remember." Outside, the thing reached the car. It pressed one palm against the driver's side window, the skin peeling back to reveal blackened bone beneath. The glass frosted over where it touched, tiny cracks spreading outward like spiderwebs. The lantern's flame flared, casting the interior of the car in stark, flickering light. And in that light, Emma saw them. Figures, dozens of them, standing among the trees, their faces obscured by shadow. Some were tall, some hunched, some little more than wisps of darkness given form. All of them watched. All of them waited. The thing outside leaned down, pressing its face against the cracked glass. Its breath fogged the window as it spoke, its voice muffled but clear. "Let me in, little keepers." Lucas shuddered violently, his back arching against the seat. A strangled noise escaped his throat as the black veins reached his temples, branching across his face like cracks in drying paint. His fingers spasmed, then went still. When he opened his eyes again, they weren't his own. They were the lantern's. Black, burning, hungry. Emma recoiled, her spine pressing into the passenger door. The thing outside laughed, the sound echoing through the car, through her skull. The lantern's flame pulsed in time with it, the shadows inside the car twisting, reaching for her. Lucas, or what was left of him, turned his head toward her. His smile mirrored the thing outside's. "Don't be afraid," he said, his voice layered with something ancient and terrible. "You'll make a beautiful light." The car door unlocked with a click. Emma didn't hesitate. She threw herself out of the car, hitting the ground hard enough to send pain shooting up her wrists. The thing outside shrieked, the sound tearing through the night as it lunged for her. Emma rolled, scrambling to her feet just as its fingers grazed her jacket. She ran, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her legs burning. The trees loomed ahead, their branches clawing at the sky. Behind her, the thing laughed. And then Lucas's voice, his real voice, shouted after her, "Emma, don't!" She risked a glance back. Lucas stood beside the car, his face pale but human again, the black veins receding as if they'd never been there. He reached for her, his expression desperate. "It's tricking you. Don't go into the trees." The thing wearing their grandmother's skin was gone. So was the lantern. Emma slowed, her chest heaving. The woods ahead were dark, too dark, the spaces between the trees like pools of ink. Something moved in that darkness, something that watched her with unseen eyes. Lucas took a step toward her, his hands outstretched. "Please," he begged, "come back to the car. We'll leave together. Just don't." A branch snapped in the woods. Then another. Something was coming. Emma looked at Lucas, then at the trees, then back at him. The choice was hers, and the lantern was waiting. Emma stood frozen between the car and the woods, her pulse hammering so hard she could feel it in her temples. Lucas remained where he was, one hand still outstretched, his fingers trembling. The black veins had receded from his face, but his eyes were still wrong. Too dark, too deep, like looking into the lantern's flame itself. Another branch snapped in the forest behind her, closer this time. Lucas's expression twisted. "Emma, please." His voice cracked on her name. "It's not me it wants. It's you. The lantern chose you." A cold breath of air slithered across the back of Emma's neck, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something sweetly rotten. The trees ahead swayed despite the lack of wind, their branches creaking like old bones. She took an involuntary step back toward the car. Lucas's shoulders sagged in relief. Then the radio inside the car turned on again. Static filled the air, sharp and grating, before resolving into a voice Emma recognized instantly, her own. "Don't trust him," it whispered. Lucas's face went slack. His outstretched hand twitched, fingers curling into claws for a fraction of a second before relaxing again. Emma's breath caught. The voice from the radio continued, soft and mocking. "Asterisk, he's lying. He's not Lucas anymore. Look at his shadow." Asterisk. Emma's gaze dropped. The moonlight cast Lucas's shadow long across the gravel driveway, except it wasn't his shadow at all. The shape was wrong, the proportions twisted, the head too large, the limbs too long, and it wasn't connected to him. A thin sliver of darkness stretched between his feet, and where the shadow began, like a tether straining to snap. Lucas followed her stare. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The shadow turned its head toward Emma and smiled. Lucas made a choked noise, his hands flying to his throat as the black veins surged back, spreading faster now, consuming him. His pupils dilated until no white remained, his irises swallowed by endless black. When he spoke again, his voice was layered with something ancient and ravenous. "You should have run when you had the chance." The shadow detached from the ground completely, rising up behind Lucas like a second skin, its elongated fingers draping over his shoulders in a grotesque parody of an embrace. Emma stumbled back, her heel catching on a root. She barely registered the pain as she fell, her palms scraping against gravel. The woods loomed behind her, the trees parting as something moved within the darkness. Something tall, something patient. The thing wearing Lucas's skin took a step forward. The shadow clung to him, moving when he moved, its grin widening with each step. The radio in the car continued to whisper, the voice shifting now, becoming younger, more familiar. A child's voice. Asterisk, help me, Emma. Asterisk. Emma scrambled to her feet, her back pressed against the rough bark of the nearest tree. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her vision swimming. The thing that had been Lucas was nearly upon her. The shadow stretching toward her, fingers elongating, reaching. A hand closed around her wrist. Emma nearly screamed, twisting to see who or what had grabbed her. A girl stood beside her, no older than 10, her pale face streaked with dirt and tears. Her grip was ice cold, her fingers too thin, her nails blackened and cracked. But her eyes were human. Terrified. "Run," the girl whispered. Then she yanked Emma into the trees. The forest swallowed them whole. Branches whipped at Emma's face and arms as the girl pulled her deeper into woods, their footsteps muffled by layers of dead leaves and moss. The air grew thicker, heavier, the scent of rot overpowering. Behind them, the thing wearing Lucas's form shrieked, the sound tearing through the night like shattered glass. The girl didn't slow down. Emma's lungs burned, her legs threatening to give out. But the girl's grip was iron, dragging her forward even as roots snaked up to trip them, even as the shadows between the trees seemed to reach for them. Then, without warning, the girl stopped. Emma nearly collided with her breath coming in ragged sobs. They stood in a small clearing, the moonlight filtering through the branches above in pale, sickly shafts. At the center of the clearing sat the lantern, its flame burned blue, waiting. The girl turned to Emma, her hollow eyes brimming with tears. "I tried to warn you," she whispered. "I carved the words. I tried so hard." Emma's blood ran cold. You're the one who..." The girl nodded, her lower lip trembling. "The first keeper. Before your grandmother. Before all the others." She glanced over her shoulder, her entire body tensing. "He's coming. You have to choose." Emma stared at the lantern, its light flickering gently, innocently. Choose what? The girl's fingers tightened around Emma's wrist. To take it or break it. A branch snapped somewhere in the trees behind them. Closer, closer. The girl's voice dropped to a whisper. "But choose fast. He doesn't like to wait." The lantern's flame pulsed, casting long, twisting shadows across the clearing. And in those shadows, something moved. The shadows around the lantern twisted like living smoke, forming shapes that lingered just beyond recognition. A face here, a grasping hand there, before dissolving back into the gloom. The girl's grip on Emma's wrist tightened, her nails biting into skin. "He's here," she whispered. Emma didn't need to ask who. The air itself grew heavier, pressing against her eardrums like deep water. The trees at the edge of the clearing swayed despite the stillness of the night, their branches creaking as if something large moved between them. The lantern's flame flickered, its blue light deepening to an unnatural violet. The glass began to frost over, delicate patterns spreading across its surface like creeping vines. The girl's breath came in short, panicked bursts. "You have to decide. Now!" Emma's gaze darted between the lantern and the encroaching darkness. "If I take it, what happens?" "You become the keeper. You hold the flame, and it holds you." The girl's hollow eyes flickered with something like sorrow. "Like it held me. Like it held your grandmother." A branch snapped. Too close. Emma's pulse roared in her ears. "And if I break it?" The girl flinched as if struck. "Then it's free. And so is he." A low, wet chuckle rippled through the clearing. It didn't come from the trees. It came from beneath them, from the earth itself. The ground trembled faintly, dead leaves skittering across the dirt, as if something beneath the soil was stirring. The lantern's flame turned black. The girl let go of Emma's wrist and backed away, her tattered dress fluttering around her thin legs. "It's too late. He's decided for you." Emma reached for the lantern, not to take it, to smash it against the nearest tree. Her fingers closed around the handle, and the world split open. The clearing, the trees, the very air, everything tore apart like tissue paper, revealing a yawning void beneath the fragile skin of reality. Emma screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the hungry dark. The lantern tumbled from her grasp, its glass shattering against the ground, the black flame within erupting upward in a column of twisting shadow. The girl shrieked, her form unraveling like smoke in the wind, her voice blending with a chorus of others, hundreds, thousands, all screaming at once. The ground beneath Emma gave way. She fell, not downward, not upward, sideways, through layers of something that wasn't space, through memories that weren't hers. She saw the girl, the first keeper, weeping as she lit the lantern for the first time, her hands shaking. She saw her grandmother, young and afraid, carving words into the lantern's base with a rusted nail. She saw Lucas, his eyes black, his smile too wide, standing over 100 other Lucases, all identical, all wrong. Then, impact. Emma gasped as solid ground slammed into her back, the breath driven from her lungs. She lay sprawled on cold stone, her vision swimming. The air here was thick with the scent of damp earth and burning hair. Slowly, she pushed herself up. She was in a cavern, so vast the ceiling was lost in shadow. The walls were lined with lanterns, hundreds of them, thousands, all dark, all covered in dust. At the center of the cavern stood a single, twisted tree, its branches bare, its trunk split down the middle like an open wound. And hanging from the tallest branch, suspended by a frayed rope, was a body. No, not a body. A husk. Its skin was parchment thin, stretched taut over brittle bones, its mouth sewn shut with black thread. Its empty eye socket stared down at Emma, its head lolling gently as if caught in a breeze. The shattered remains of the lantern lay at the base of the tree, its black flame now a smoldering wisp. A whisper slithered through the cavern, echoing off the stone walls. Asterisk, little keeper. Asterisk. Emma turned. The shadow that had worn Lucas like a suit stood at the edge of the lantern light, its form shifting, never settling. It wasn't one thing, it was all of them. The girl, the grandmother, Lucas, every keeper that had ever been. And it was smiling. "You broke the cage," it murmured, stepping closer. Asterisk, now we can play. Asterisk. The hanging husk above them twitched. Then its stitches began to unravel. The black threads holding the husk's mouth closed snapped one by one. The sound like insects clicking in the dark. Its jaw unhinged with a wet crack, stretching wider than any human mouth could, revealing a throat lined with rows of needle-thin teeth. A sigh escaped it, a sound of relief, of hunger, before its hollow-eyed sockets fixed on Emma, the shadow that had been Lucas dissolved into the cavern's gloom, its laughter lingering like smoke. The other lanterns lining the walls began to rattle, their glass chiming like a chorus of broken bells. Emma scrambled backward, her palms scraping against rough stone. The shattered lantern lay between her and the husk, its last embers of black flame sputtering. The air grew thick, pressing against her skin like a living thing, carrying the scent of burning hair and spoiled milk. The husk's fingers twitched. Then, with a jerky, unnatural motion, it reached up and gripped the rope around its neck. The fibers groaned as they stretched, then snapped. The husk dropped. It landed in a crouch, its bone-thin limbs folding like a spider's. The moment its feet touched the ground, the cavern trembled, dust shaking loose from the ceiling high above. The lanterns rattled harder, their metal frames screeching against stone. Emma's breath came in short, panicked gasps. She had no weapon, no way out. The cavern stretched endlessly in every direction, the darkness between the lanterns pulsing like a heartbeat. The husk straightened to its full height, its stitched-shut eyelids fluttering as if something moved beneath them. When it spoke, its voice was a chorus. The girl's whisper, Lucas's snarl, her grandmother's rasp, all layered together into something monstrous. Asterisk, you should not have come, little keeper. Asterisk, Emma's fingers closed around a rock beside her. It was cold and jagged, its edges biting into her palm. Useless against whatever this thing was, but it was all she had. The husk's head tilted, its gaping mouth stretching into something like a smile. Asterisk, you think that will save you? Asterisk, Emma didn't answer. Her gaze darted to the shattered lantern, its glass glinting in the dim light. The girl's words echoed in her mind. Asterisk, then it's free. And so is he. Asterisk. The husk took a step forward. Emma threw the rock. It struck the husk's chest with a hollow thud, doing no damage but making it pause. In that split second, Emma lunged for the largest shard of the lantern's glass, her fingers closing around it just as the husk shrieked, a sound that shook the cavern, that made the lanterns shatter in their frames, that sent glass raining down like knives. Emma didn't hesitate. She slashed the shard across her own palm, hissing as blood welled up, thick and dark. The husk froze. The blood dripped onto the remains of the lantern. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the cavern screamed. The shadows convulsed, the darkness writhing as if in pain. The husk stumbled back, its hands flying to its face, its mouth opening in a silent howl. The ground beneath Emma trembled, cracks racing through the stone like lightning, revealing a void beneath, a void that stared back. The lantern shard in Emma's hand grew hot, then cold, then hot again, the edges sealing against her skin as if fusing to her flesh. The blood on the lanterns remained bubbled, blackening, spreading like ink in water. The husk's voice, when it came, was no longer a chorus. It was singular, terrified. No. The cracks in the ground widened. Something moved in the depths, something vast, something hungry. Emma tried to pull her hand away from the lantern shard, but it held fast, the glass digging deeper, her blood flowing freely now, dripping, dripping. The husk lunged for her, its fingers hooked into claws. The void beneath them surged upward, and the last thing Emma saw before the darkness took her was a husk's face twisting in recognition, in fear, as the thing from the void wrapped around it, pulling it down, down, down. Then, silence. Emma opened her eyes. She was kneeling in the attic. Dust motes floated in the sunlight, streaming through the window. The lantern sat whole and unbroken in front of her, its flame a soft, steady blue. No blood on her hands. No shard in her palm. No husk. No Lucas. Just the lantern. And the words on its base, now glowing faintly. Asterisk. The keeper becomes a kept. Asterisk. A floorboard creaked behind her. Emma turned. The attic door stood open, and in the hallway beyond, something waited in the shadows, watching, smiling, hungry. The figure in the hallway remained perfectly still, its features swallowed by shadow, despite the sunlight streaming through the attic window. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she stared at the silhouette, her fingers curling into fists against the wooden floorboards. The lantern's flame flickered, casting dancing light across the walls, making the shadows in the doorway seem to breathe. A floorboard groaned under unseen weight. Emma scrambled backward until her spine pressed against the far wall. The lantern sat between her and the doorway, its light pulsing gently, almost mockingly. The words on its base glowed brighter now, the metal heating beneath the inscription until the air above it shimmered. "You're not real," Emma whispered, her voice cracking. "This isn't real." The figure in the hallway tilted its head. A wet, clicking sound came from its throat, like laughter choked back by someone that had forgotten how to breathe. Then it stepped forward. Moonlight from the window caught its face for just an instant, long enough for Emma to see hollow cheeks, skin stretched too tight over bone, and eyes that reflected the lantern's flame back at her in twin points of blue fire. The moment stretched, endless. Then the lantern's flame turned black. The thing in the doorway lunged. Emma rolled sideways as clawed fingers raked the wall where her head had been. Splinters went flying through the air. She came up crouched, her pulse roaring in her ears, the taste of copper sharp on her tongue. The attic no longer looked like her grandmother's. The walls stretched upward into impossible heights, the ceiling lost in swirling darkness. The single window had multiplied, dozens of them now lining the elongated walls, each showing a different scene. Lucas standing in the driveway, his face slack, black veins pulsing beneath the skin. The girl in the tattered dress hanging from the twisted tree, her mouth sewn shut with black thread. The husk crawling to the cavern of lanterns, its stitched eyelids fluttering. The thing that had been in the doorway turned slowly, its joints popping with each movement. Up close, Emma could see its skin wasn't skin at all. It was parchment, yellowed and brittle, stretched over something that squirmed beneath the surface. "Little keeper," it rasped, its voice the sound of pages turning in a long-forgotten book. "You cannot outrun what you have already become." The lantern's flame surged, the black fire licking at the air, casting no light but instead drinking it in, making the shadows around them deepen. The windows showing Lucas and the girl and the husk began to crack, fissures racing across the glass. Emma's gaze darted between the thing advancing on her and the lantern. The words on its base now burned white-hot, the metal beginning to warp. The keeper becomes a kept. A memory surfaced, her grandmother's voice, years ago, whispering over tea. Asterisk, some doors, once opened, cannot be closed, but they can be passed through. Asterisk, the thing was nearly upon her, its breath cold against her face, smelling of old books and damp earth. Its fingers, too long, too many joints, twitched at its sides. Emma made her choice. She grabbed the lantern. The moment her fingers closed around the handle, the world dissolved. The attic, the thing, the windows, all of it shattered like glass, fragments spinning away into nothingness. Emma felt herself falling again, but this time she held tight to the lantern, its flame now a searing white, so bright it burned her eyes. Voices surrounded her, layered over each other. She took it. Finally, a new keeper. No, she's different. Then, impact. Emma gasped as she landed on her knees in thick, damp grass. The lantern's light dimmed to a soft blue, illuminating just enough for her to see she was in a graveyard. Ancient headstones leaned at odd angles around her, their inscriptions worn smooth by time. A thick mist curled around her ankles, cold and clinging. Before her stood a mausoleum, its iron door slightly ajar. From within came a faint, familiar sound, the rustle of pages turning. The lantern's flame flickered toward the open door, as if pointing the way. Emma stood on shaky legs, her fingers numb around the lantern's handle. The metal no longer felt cold. It felt alive, pulsing gently in time with her heartbeat. From the mausoleum, a voice called out, not the rasping, whispered thing in the attic, but something softer, younger. Emma? Lucas's voice. But Emma had learned better by now. She took a step back, her eyes scanning the graveyard. The mist thickened between the headstones, taking shape. Figures, dozens of them, all watching her with hollow eyes. Keepers. Former keepers. Their mouths moved in unison, whispering words she couldn't quite hear. The lantern in her hands grew heavier, its flame burning brighter. The words on its base had changed again, the metal reforming itself into a new message. Asterisk, the first flame must meet the last. Asterisk, the mausoleum door creaked open wider. Something shuffled inside, something that breathed in wet, ragged gasps. Emma turned to run, and found herself face to face with a girl in the tattered dress. Up close, Emma could see the rope burns around her neck, the way her skin had turned gray with decades of death. But her eyes were alive, terrified. "You have to listen," the girl whispered, her voice barely audible over the rising wind. "It's showing you what you want to see. It's always lying." The lantern's flame turned red. The girl flinched away from the light, her form flickering like a candle in a draft. "It's too late for me," she said, her voice fading. "But you can still." A hand shot out from the mausoleum door, skeletal, flesh hanging in strips, and wrapped around the girl's wrist. The girl's mouth opened in a silent scream as she was yanked backward, her form dissolving into mist as she was pulled into the darkness beyond the door. The lantern's flame roared upward, turning the color of old blood. From inside the mausoleum, the wet breathing grew louder, closer, and then a footstep, just on the other side of the door. Emma's hands shook so badly the lantern's light trembled across the gravestones, making the shadows dance like reaching hands. The thing in the mausoleum took another step forward, and the lantern's flame turned black once more. The black flame pulsed like a dying heartbeat, casting jagged shadows that slithered across the gravestones. Emma's breath fogged in the suddenly frigid air, her fingers numb around the lantern's handle. The mausoleum door creaked wider, inch by inch, revealing only darkness within, a darkness that seemed to press outward, thick as oil. The wet breathing from inside grew louder, closer, each ragged inhale ending in a guttural rattle. Something scraped against the stone floor, long nails dragging, bones shifting, something heavy being pulled forward. Emma stumbled back, her heel catching on an exposed root. She barely registered the pain as she fell, her elbow striking a moss-covered headstone. The lantern tumbled from her grip, its glass striking the earth with a dull thud. The black flame guttered but didn't go out, instead spreading across the ground in inky tendrils that wound through the grass like serpents. The mausoleum door flew open with a crash. Emma's scream caught in her throat. The thing that emerged was neither the husk, nor the shadow, nor the girl. It was all of them and none of them. A shifting mass of parchment skin and exposed bone, its limbs elongating and retracting like a spider testing its legs. Its face, if it could be called a face, was a hollow void where the lantern's black flame now burned in twin pinpricks, floating where eyes should be. It moved in jerking, unnatural motions, its body unfolding as it stepped fully into moonlight. The mist recoiled from its presence, the graveyard itself seeming to shrink away. The lantern's flames surged, the inky tendrils racing back to it, coiling around the thing's ankles like loyal hounds. The words on its base glowed white-hot again, the metal warping, reforming. Asterisk, the keeper becomes a flame. Asterisk, the thing reached for Emma, its fingers stretching, bones cracking as they lengthened. A hand closed around her arm. Emma nearly screamed again before realizing the grip was human, warm, alive. She twisted to see Lucas kneeling beside her, his face streaked with dirt and sweat, his eyes clear for the first time since the attic. The black veins had receded, leaving only faint traces along his temples. "Run," he breathed, yanking her to her feet. The thing in the mausoleum doorway shrieked, a sound that shook the gravestones and sent cracks racing through the mausoleum's facade. The lantern's flame roared higher, the black fire licking at the thing's parchment skin, merging with it. Lucas didn't wait. He pulled Emma into the mist, their feet slipping on damp grass as they wove between the leaning headstones. Behind them, the ground trembled, the wet sound of something massive dragging itself forward. The mist thickened, clinging to their clothes, their skin, filling their lungs with the scent of mildew and old blood. Emma's pulse pounded in her ears, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Lucas's grip on her hand was iron, his strides long and desperate. A shape loomed ahead, a wrought iron gate, rusted and sagging on its hinges. Beyond it, a path vanished into the trees. They were almost there. Then the lantern's light bloomed behind them, casting their shadows long against the gate. Not black blue, the pure, cold blue of the first flame. Emma risked a glance back. The thing stood at the center of the graveyard, the lantern floating before it. The black flame now entirely absorbed into its hollow chest. The other flames, the ones in the countless lanterns lining the cavern she'd seen earlier, all burned within it, swirling beneath its parchment skin like fireflies trapped in a jar. The girl in the tattered dress stood beside it, her form flickering, her mouth no longer sewn shut. When she spoke, her voice was a barest whisper, carried on the wind. "It's waking up." The thing's head snapped toward them, its void-like face stretching into a grin too wide for any human skull. Lucas slammed into the gate, his free hand fumbling with the latch. Rust flaked away beneath his fingers, the metal groaning in protest. "Come on," he hissed, throwing his weight against it. The gate gave way with a scream of metal. They stumbled through just as the ground behind them erupted, dirt and stone flying upward as something massive uncoiled from beneath the graves. The thing, the keeper, the flame, whatever it had become, threw back its head and howled, the sound shaking the trees, sending dead leaves raining down around them. The path ahead was dark, the trees pressing close on either side, their branches woven together like bony fingers. Lucas then slowed down, pulling Emma along even as roots snaked up to trip them, even as the wind itself seemed to push back against them. The lantern's light, now coming from the thing behind them, pulsed, sending their shadows dancing ahead like fleeing ghosts. Emma's lungs burned. Her legs ached. But she ran because the alternative, a hand burst from the earth in front of them, skeletal fingers closing around her ankle. Emma fell hard, her knees striking stone, pain lancing up her leg. Lucas whirled, his foot connecting with the wrist, bones snapping under the force of the blow. The hand crumbled to dust, but more were already emerging, dozens of them, all grasping, all hungry. The trees ahead shifted, their trunks twisting, branches lowering like arms preparing to embrace. Lucas yanked him up, his eyes wild. "We can't stop." She knew he was right, knew whatever was behind them was worse than whatever lay ahead. So they ran. The path twisted, turning back on itself in ways that defied logic, the trees watching with knot-hole eyes, the hands grasping at their heels. The lantern's light grew brighter behind them, the thing's laughter echoing through the woods, layered with the voices of all the keepers who had come before. Emma's vision swam. Her breath came in ragged sobs. Just when she thought she couldn't take another step, The trees parted, revealing a sight that made her blood run cold. A house. Her grandmother's house. The front door stood open, golden light spilling onto the porch like a welcome. Lucas skidded to a stop, his chest heaving. No, we couldn't have. They hadn't run in a circle. They couldn't have. And yet, the thing behind them howled again, closer now. The hands and the earth redoubled their efforts, bones clicking as they pulled themselves free of the dirt. The trees leaned in, their branches creaking, and the house waited, its open door a gaping maw. Emma turned to Lucas, his face pale in the eerie light, his eyes reflecting the horror she felt. There was no choice. Hand in hand, they ran toward the house, toward the lantern's first flame, toward the beginning of it all. The door slammed shut behind them. The slam of the door echoed through the house like a gunshot, the sound reverberating through Emma's bones. The warm golden light that beckoned them inside now flickered, revealing the truth. The walls weren't the familiar floral wallpaper of her grandmother's home, but stretched human skin, yellow with age, pulsing gently as if breathing. Lucas's grip on her hand tightened painfully. This isn't. The floorboards beneath them groaned, shifting like living things. Emma looked down to see faces pressed up against the wood from below, their mouths open in silent screams, their eye sockets filled with wriggling black tendrils. The lantern sat on the hallway table ahead of them, its flame burning a sickly green. Not their lantern, not the one they'd left behind, but one just like it, older, cracked. The glass was cloudy with decades of fingerprints, the brass tarnished black in places. The words on its base were barely visible beneath layers of grime, but Emma didn't need to read them to know what they said. The keeper becomes the kept. A floorboard creaked upstairs. Then another. Something heavy dragged itself across the ceiling, the plaster cracking with each movement, dust sifting down like snow. Lucas pulled Emma toward the kitchen, his voice a strained whisper. Back door, now! They moved in sync, their footsteps silent on the screaming floor. The kitchen door stood ajar, moonlight spilling through the gap. Emma could see the overgrown garden beyond. The rusted swings that she played on as a child swaying gently in a non-existent wind. Almost there, almost free. Then the lantern's flame turned black. The kitchen door slammed shut. From the hallway came the wet, clicking laughter they'd heard in the attic. From upstairs, the dragging sound stopped. The house held its breath. The refrigerator door swung open on its own, revealing shelves lined not with food, but with jars. Dozens of them, each containing a single human, eye floating in murky liquid. Every pupil turned in unison to stare at Emma and Lucas. The oven clicked on, the burner coils glowing red hot. The faucet turned itself on full blast, the water running black and thick, filling the sink with something that moved against the current. Lucas backed away, his shoulders hitting the cabinets. Emma. His voice was barely audible over the rushing water. The window. The kitchen window was small, the glass warped with age, but big enough to squeeze through. Emma lunged for it, her fingers scrambling at the latch. It was stuck, painted shut by decades of neglect. Behind them, the dragging sound resumed. Closer now, at the top of the stairs. Emma grabbed a cast iron skillet from the stove and swung. The glass shattered outward with a crash, the night air rushing in, cold and clean compared to the stifling rot of the house. Go! Lucas shoved her toward the window, just as the ceiling directly above him split open, plaster raining down as something massive and pale dropped through. Emma caught only a glimpse, a tangle of limbs, too many joints, a gaping mouth lined with needle teeth. Before Lucas was gone, swallowed by the thing's bulk. Lucas. His hand shot out from beneath the writhing mass, fingers clawing at the linoleum. His wedding ring, the one he never took off, glinted in the lantern's dying light. Emma hesitated for one terrible second. The thing shifted, its bulk rolling, and she saw Lucas's face, white with pain but alive, his mouth forming a single word. Run. Then the back door burst open. Not from the force of the thing inside, from something outside. Emma turned, the skillet still in her hand, just as a girl in the tattered dress stepped into the kitchen. But she was different now. Oh, her skin no longer gray with death, her dress clean and white, her eyes bright with tears. The rope burns around her neck had faded to silvery scars. She held out her hand. "Please," she whispered. "It's not too late." The thing on top of Lucas shrieked, its many limbs flailing, its attention now divided. Emma looked from the girl to Lucas, his face growing paler by the second, his outstretched hand trembling. The lantern in the hallway flared, its black flame licking at the ceiling, the heat intense enough to make the jars on the refrigerator shelf rattle. The girl's outstretched hand began to smoke, her skin blackening at the edges, as if burning away. "Choose!" she gasped, her form flickering between the clean white dress and the tattered rags. Emma made her decision. She grabbed the girl's hand. The moment their fingers touched, the world exploded in white light. The kitchen, the thing, the house, all of it vanished, replaced by endless fields of swaying golden grass under a starless sky. The air smelled of lightning and fresh earth. Emma stood alone in the field, the girl nowhere to be seen. Before her stood the twisted tree from the cavern, its branches heavy with hanging lanterns, each burning a different color. At its base knelt Lucas, his hands bound with black rope, his head bowed, and beside him, holding the end of the rope like a leash, stood Emma's grandmother. Not the monster from the house, not the husk, her grandmother as she'd been in life. Soft white hair, kind eyes, the scent of lavender and baking bread clinging to her floral dress. She smiled at Emma, her grip tightening on the rope. "Hello, Lilember," she said. "I've been waiting for you." The lanterns in the tree all flared at once, their light painting the grass in shifting colors. And in that light, Emma finally saw the truth. The rope around Lucas's neck wasn't a rope at all. It was a wick, and he was burning. The golden field stretched endlessly in every direction, the tall grass whispering secrets as it swayed against Emma's legs. Lucas knelt motionless at the base of the twisted tree, his skin translucent in the multicolored lantern light, his veins pulsing with fire rather than blood. The wick rope around his neck smoldered, thin tendrils of smoke curling upward to join the swirling canopy of lights above. Emma's grandmother tightened her grip on the rope, her wrinkled fingers blackening where they touched the burning fibers. The smile never left her face. "You look just like your mother," she said, her voice thick with nostalgia. She stood where you're standing now, made the same choice you're about to make. Emma's mouth went dry. Her mother had died when she was 6. A car accident, or so she'd been told. "You're lying." The grandmother's smile widened, revealing teeth too white, too even. "Am I?" She jerked the rope, and Lucas's head snapped up. His eyes were pools of molten gold. His lips parted in a silent scream. The fire within him burned brighter, licking at the hollow of his throat. Around them, the hanging lanterns began to sway, their flames dancing wildly despite the still air. The glass of each lantern fogged over, then cleared to reveal scenes from Emma's life. Her mother holding a lantern identical to the one in the attic, her hand shaking. Her grandmother sewing a child's mouth shut with black thread. Lucas, years before they'd met, standing in this very field, his face streaked with tears. Emma took a step forward, the grass crunching underfoot like dry bones. "Let him go." The grandmother laughed, a sound like wind through dead leaves. "Oh, my little Ember, he was never yours to lose." She stroked Lucas's hair with her free hand, her fingers leaving charred streaks in the strands. "He's been mine since the day he was born, just like you." The revelation hit Emma like a physical blow. Lucas had known. All this time, he'd known what the lantern was, what it could do. The late-night drives past abandoned houses, the way he'd always dared to go inside. Had it all been leading to this moment? As if sensing her thoughts, Lucas's fiery eyes met hers. His lips moved, forming silent words. "I'm sorry." The grandmother yanked the rope again, and Lucas arched backward, his body convulsing as the fire within him surged. The wick around his neck glowed white-hot, the smoke thickening into shapes. Faces Emma recognized. Her mother's face, the girl in the tattered dress. Countless others, all keepers, all burning. Emma's legs gave out, her knees hitting the hard earth. The grass around her withered. turning black as the smoke touched it. "What do you want?" The grandmother's eyes reflected the lantern light, her irises shifting colors like oil on water. "What I've always wanted," she said softly. "To be free." She held out her free hand, the skin peeling back to reveal blackened bone beneath. "Take my place, little ember. Tend the flames. And I'll let your Lucas go." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Emma glanced at Lucas, at the fire consuming him from within, at the wick slowly burning down toward his skin. She knew what would happen when it reached the end. The grandmother's outstretched hand trembled, flakes of charred flesh drifting away like ash. "The first flame is dying," she whispered. "Without a new keeper, they all go out. And when they do..." She didn't need to finish. The vision in the lantern said enough. Darkness spreading, shadows moving freely, the things in the cavern and the graveyard and the attic walking in daylight. Emma swallowed hard, her throat raw. "If I say yes..." The grandmother's grin turned feral. "Then you burn forever." She said it like a gift, like salvation. "But he lives." The wick around Lucas's neck hissed, the flame creeping closer to his skin. He didn't scream, didn't struggle, just watched Emma with those terrible golden eyes, his expression resigned. Emma looked down at her own hands, at the unmarked skin, at the veins that still carried blood instead of fire. She thought of the girl in the dress, of the way she pleaded for help, thought of her mother, who must have stood in the same field, made the same choice. The grandmother's patience wore thin. The grass around her feet burst into flame, the fire spreading in a perfect circle, cutting off any escape. "Choose, little ember." Emma closed her eyes and made her decision. She reached for the grandmother's hand. The moment their fingers touched, the world exploded in heat and light. The golden fields burned away, revealing the cavern of lanterns beneath, the twisted tree now a towering pyre of screaming faces. The grandmother's flesh sloughed off like old paper, revealing the husk beneath, its stitched mouth curling into a smile. Lucas collapsed as the wick around his neck turned to ash, the fire within him guttering out. He gasped, his eyes clearing, his hands scrabbling at the scorched earth. Emma barely noticed. The fire was inside her now, racing through her veins, filling her lungs, her mouth, her eyes. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Only smoke, thick and black, coiling upward to join the others. The grandmother, the husk, the thing, laughed as it stepped back, its stitches unraveling one by one. "Thank you, little ember," it whispered, its voice already fading. "I'm free." Emma burned, and as the last of her humanity turned to ash, she finally understood the words on the lantern's base. The keeper becomes a flame. The final stitch popped. The husk's mouth opened, and the first keeper walked free. The fire consumed Emma from within, her flesh becoming translucent as the flames licked through her veins like liquid gold. She opened her mouth to scream, but only smoke poured forth, thick and black, coiling upward to join the swirling vortex above the twisted tree. The pain was unimaginable, yet somehow distant, as if she were feeling it through layers of wool. Lucas crawled toward her, his hands leaving charred prints on the scorched earth. His lips moved, forming words she could no longer hear. His eyes, human again, but filled with a horror deeper than any she'd seen before, reflected her transformation back at her. Emma looked down at her hands. They were no longer hands, just flickering outlines of light and shadow, fingers stretching into tendrils of smoke that curled around the wick rope now slithering toward her from the base of the tree. It wound around her wrists, her throat, its fibers singing her newly formed flesh with a sound like whispering voices. The former keeper, the thing that had worn her grandmother's face, stood at the edge of the burning field, its stitches fully unraveled now, its true form revealed at last. It was neither human nor monster, but something in between, a shifting mass of darkness and light, its edges never settling, its face a void where the first flame still burned faintly. "Welcome home, keeper," it said, its voice the sound of wind through dead leaves. The wick tightened around Emma's throat, and she remembered. Generations of keepers flashed before her eyes. Her mother, the girl in the tattered dress. Countless others stretching back through centuries. She saw them lighting the lantern, tending its flame, Their bodies slowly turned to smoke as the fire consumed them from within. Saw them making the same choice she had, trading their humanity for the illusion of saving someone they loved. All of them bound, all of them burning, all of them trapped. Emma's fire flared brighter as realization dawned. She hadn't freed Lucas. She'd only given the first keeper what it wanted, a replacement, a new prison guard for an eternal flame. The thing that had been her grandmother stretched its newly freed limbs, sighing as it tested its movements. So long, it murmured. So very, very long. Lucas found his voice at last. "Emma." She turned toward him, the motion sending ripples through her fiery form. The wick around her throat pulsed, its fibers tightening and warning. She could feel its intent, the ancient magic that bound her to this place, to this duty. But something was different. The other keepers had accepted their fate. Emma raged. The field erupted in flames, the fire spreading outward in a shockwave that sent Lucas skidding backward and made the former keeper stumble. The hanging lanterns shattered in unison, their glass raining down like jagged hail. The twisted tree groaned, its branches blackening, the faces carved into its bark screaming silently as they burned. The wick around Emma's throat began to smolder. The former keeper's void-like face twisted in something like alarm. "No, you can't." Emma reached up with her fiery hands and pulled. The wick snapped with sound like 1,000 sighs released at once. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the ground split open beneath them, fissures racing through the scorched earth, revealing the cavern of lanterns far below. Only now the lanterns were dark, their flames guttering out one by one. The former keeper shrieked, a sound that made the very air vibrate. "What have you done?" Emma didn't answer. She turned to Lucas, her fiery form already beginning to dissipate, without the wick to bind her. She had no voice left, no mouth to speak. But she poured every ounce of her remaining will into a single thought, a single hope. "Take my hand." Lucas didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, his fingers closing around her burning wrist. The moment they touched, the fire leaped from Emma to him, the flames racing up his arm like living things. But instead of burning him, they merged with him, his skin glowing gold where the fire touched. The former keeper howled in rage, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. "No, he's not a keeper. He can't hold the flame." Emma's consciousness faded, her form dissolving into smoke. But not before she saw Lucas stand, his body now alight with her fire, his eyes burning with newfound understanding. The last thing she heard before the darkness took her was his voice, strong and clear. "I'm not a keeper." He raised his fiery hands. "I'm the spark." And the world exploded in light. The explosion of light tore through the cavern like a supernova, bleaching the stone walls white, and sending the remaining lanterns swinging violently on their hooks. Lucas stood at the epicenter, wreathed in golden fire that danced across his skin without burning, his outline shimmering with barely contained power. The former keeper recoiled, its void-like face contorting in pain as the light touched it. The edges of its form began to fray, dark threads unraveling into the air like smoke from extinguished candle. "You cannot!" It rasped, its voice breaking apart. The cycle must not be broken. Lucas took a step forward, each footfall leaving smoldering prints in the stone. "It already is." Emma's consciousness, scattered by the explosion, began to coalesce again, not in physical form, but as a presence woven into flames that now lived within Lucas. She could see through his eyes, feel the heat of fire that now answered to him rather than consuming him. The realization struck her with sudden clarity. He wasn't becoming a keeper. He was becoming something else entirely. The cavern trembled as the last of the lantern flames winked out, plunging most of the space into darkness, except for the circle of golden light surrounding Lucas. The former keeper shrieked again, its form collapsing inward like a dying star, the darkness at its core pulsing erratically. From the shadows of the edges of the cavern, figures emerged, the previous keepers, their forms no longer bound to their lanterns, their translucent bodies glowing faintly with residual flame. At their head stood the girl in the tattered dress, now whole and unburned, her eyes fixed on the former keeper with grim satisfaction. "You lied to us," she said, her voice echoing with the weight of centuries. "You told us the flame needed tending. that the world would end if it went out. She raised a hand, pointing at Lucas, but he carries it now. Freely, the former keeper's form flickered wildly, its edges dissolving into the dark. Fools, you don't understand what you've done. It turned its void-like gaze on Lucas. The flame must be contained. It must be controlled. Lucas raised his hands, studying the fire that danced across his palms. No, he said softly. It just needs to be shared. With a sound like a sigh, he spread his arms wide, and the fire leaped from his skin in 1,000 golden threads, arcing to the cavern to touch each of the freed keepers. Where it made contact, their forms solidified, their eyes lighting with the same golden glow. The former keeper howled as its body disintegrated further, its essence unraveling into the air. You'll regret this. The flame will consume you all. Emma, still present within the fire, felt the truth of his words, not as a threat, but as a warning. The power Lucas had unleashed was wild, untamed, without a vessel, without balance. The cavern shook again, more violently this time, great chunks of stone breaking free from the ceiling. The keepers turned as one toward Lucas, their glowing eyes questioning. The girl in the white dress stepped forward. What now? Lucas hesitated, his fire flickering uncertainly. Emma could feel his thoughts, his fear. He didn't know how to control what he'd been given. The flame was spreading too fast, growing beyond his ability to contain it. And then she understood. The answer wasn't containment. It never had been. Emma gathered what remained of her consciousness and pushed, not against the flame, but into it, letting her essence flow through the golden threads, connecting Lucas to the other keepers. She had no voice left, but her intent was clear. Together, the change was instantaneous. The erratic pulsing of the fire steadied as the keepers joined their wills to Lucas's, forming a web of shared control. The flames responded, their light softening from blinding gold to a warm, steady glow. The former keeper, now little more than a wisp of darkness, let out one final, despairing cry, and then was gone. For a moment, there was silence. Then the cavern began to collapse in earnest. Lucas turned to the others, his voice urgent. We need to go. Now. The girl nodded and reached for his hand. The other keepers followed suit, forming a chain as they raced to the crumbling passage that led upward. Behind them, the cavern dissolved into chaos, the last of the empty lanterns shattering as the roof caved in. Emma, her presence now fully merged with the shared flame, felt the moment they burst free into night air, the cool wind on Lucas's face, the stars overhead, the scent of pine and damp earth. The keepers collapsed onto grass, their forms still glowing faintly, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. In the distance, the first hints of dawn painted the horizon. Lucas looked down at his hands, where fire now lay dormant beneath the skin, waiting. He could feel Emma there, not gone but transformed, her essence woven into flame just as his now was. The girl sat up, brushing dirt from her white dress. What do we do now? She asked, her voice quiet. Lucas looked from her to the other keepers, dozens of them, from countless eras, all now free, but still bound together by the fire they shared. He thought of the former keeper's warning, of the power they now carried between them. He exhaled slowly, watching as his breath fogged in the cool morning air. We learn, he said at last. We remember, and somewhere within him, Emma burned brighter in agreement. The lantern was broken. The cycle was ended. But the flame would never die. The first light of dawn painted the forest in pale gold, glinting off the dew clinging to the grass where Lucas and the keepers lay. The air smelled of damp earth and wood smoke, the last remnants of their shared fire still curling from their fingertips in thin, wispy tendrils. Lucas flexed his hands, watching as the embers beneath his skin pulsed in time with his heartbeat. The girl in the white dress, Anna, her name came to him suddenly, as if whispered on wind, knelt beside a brook, her fingers skimming the water surface. Where she touched, the water hissed, sending up plumes of steam. She drew back with a sharp inhale. It's still too strong, she murmured. One of the other keepers, a man with burned scars covering half his face, nodded grimly. We can't control it forever. His voice was rough, whether by time and smoke. The flame needed an anchor, something to ground it. Lucas knew he was right. Even now, he could feel the fire writhing inside him, restless and hungry. Emma's presence was there too, a comforting warmth at the edge of his thoughts. But she was fading, her consciousness slipping further into the flame with each passing moment. He stood abruptly, the forest floor crunching underfoot. We need to go back. Anna's head snapped up. Back! To the house. Lucas turned, his gaze finding the path they'd stumbled down hours before, now overgrown with brambles that hadn't been there before. The original lantern is still there, if we can find it. You want to bind the flame again? Anna's voice was sharp with disbelief. After everything? No. Lucas clenched his fists, feeling the heat build in his palms. But we can't just let it run wild. There has to be another way. The Scar Keeper, Thomas, his name was Thomas, exchanged a glance with Anna, and if there isn't... Lucas didn't answer. He didn't need to. The weight of their shared understanding settled over them like a shroud. If they couldn't find a way to stabilize the flame, it would consume them all, and then unchecked it would spread. The walk back to the house was silent, the forest itself seeming to hold its breath around them. The trees grew denser the further they went, their branches tangling together overhead until they blotted out the rising sun. The air grew thick with the scent of burning oil, a telltale sign they were getting closer. Then they saw it. The house stood untouched by time, its peeling paint and sagging porch exactly as Lucas remembered. But the front door, the door that had slammed shut behind them, now hung open, swaying gently in a breeze that didn't reach the trees. From within, a faint blue glow pulsed. The lantern was waiting. Lucas took a step forward, then froze as the ground beneath his feet gave a violent shudder. The trees around them groaned, their roots tearing free from the earth as something massive stirred beneath the house. The foundation cracked, the porch splintering as a thick, black tendril burst through floorboards, its surface glistening with something that wasn't quite oil and wasn't quite blood. Anna gasped, stumbling back. It's not just a flame we freed. The realization hit Lucas like a physical blow. The former keeper had been guarding more than just a lantern. It had been keeping something else contained. Something worse. The tendril lashed out, wrapping around Thomas's ankle before he could react. He barely had time to scream before he was yanked off his feet, dragged toward the gaping maw of the house. Lucas moved without thinking, his hands igniting as he grabbed for Thomas's arm. The moment their skin touched, the fire leaped between them, racing up the tendril in a brilliant cascade of golden light. The thing beneath the house shrieked, the sound vibrating through ground and up into Lucas's bones. Thomas wrenched free, his own hands now alight, his eyes wide with terror and something else. Understanding. It's afraid of the fire, he panted. But not our fire. The original flame. Lucas turned toward the house, toward the blue glow pulsing within. The lantern was the key. It always had been. The ground heaved again, more tendrils erupting from the soil, their length studded with blinking, pupilless eyes. Anna screamed as one grazed her arm, the contact leaving a searing welt behind. Lucas made his decision. "Keep it busy," he shouted to the others, already sprinting for the house. The tendrils lashed at him, but the keepers moved as one, their combined flames creating a barrier of heat and light that forced the creature to recoil. The moment Lucas crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind him. The interior of the house was wrong. The walls stretched too far, the ceiling lost in shadow, the furniture melted and warped as if made of wax. And at the center of it all, sitting innocently on the kitchen table, was the lantern. Its flame burned blue, not the black of corruption, not the gold of their shared fire, the pure, icy blue of the very first flame. Lucas approached slowly, his own fire guttering in its presence. This close, he could see the truth. The lantern wasn't a prison. It was a crucible, a place where the flame could be shaped, controlled, but not contained, never contained. Behind him, the door shuddered under a massive impact, the wood splintering as a creature outside redoubled its efforts. The keepers couldn't hold it off forever. Lucas reached for the lantern. The moment his fingers brushed the handle, the world dissolved into blue fire. He stood in a place beyond time, beyond space, a realm of pure flame, where countless figures stood in silent vigil, their forms woven from smoke and memory. And at their center, flickering like a candle in the wind, was Emma. Her edges were indistinct, her features blurred, but her voice came through clear as day. Lucas. He reached for her, his hand passing through hers in a shower of sparks. I'm here. Emma's form rippled, her expression pained. You can't take the flame back. Not like this. I don't want to take it, Lucas said, his voice steady despite the fire raging around them. I want to change it. The other figures stirred, their hollow eyes turning toward him. One stepped forward, a woman with Emma's eyes. Her mother. The flame cannot be changed, she said, her voice echoing with the weight of centuries. It is what it is. Lucas shook his head. No, the former keeper lied to you. The flame isn't meant to be hoarded. It's meant to be shared. The realm trembled, the fire flaring white-hot. Beyond this place, in the world of flesh and blood, the creature was breaking through. The keepers were faltering. Emma's mother looked at him for a long moment, then turned to the others. One by one, they nodded. Emma reached for Lucas again, her fingers brushing his cheek, leaving trails of fire in their wake. Then do it, she whispered. Lucas closed his eyes and let the fire in. The explosion of light tore through the house, through the forest, through the very fabric of reality. The creature shrieked as the blue flame consumed it, its tendrils blackening and crumbling to ash. The keepers fell to their knees, their own fires surging as the power flowed through them, reshaping them. And in the center of it all, Lucas stood with a lantern in his hands, its flame now a swirling mix of blue and gold, of past and present, of containment and freedom. The cycle wasn't broken. It was renewed. The lantern would never die, but neither would they. The blue-gold flame pulsed in Lucas's hands, its light casting long, shifting shadows across the ruined house. The air smelled of ozone and burning cedar, the last remnants of the creature's tendrils curling into ash around the broken floorboards. The other keepers slowly picked themselves up, their eyes reflecting the lantern's new fire, no longer just gold, but threaded through with that same impossible blue. Anna was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. What did you do? Lucas stared into the flame, his reflection warping in the glass. He could still feel Emma there, her presence woven into fire, but it was different now. Clearer, stronger, like a voice coming into focus after years of static. I gave it a choice, he said. Thomas frowned, rubbing at the scars on his face. Fire doesn't choose. It just burns. A gust of wind tore through the shattered remains of the house, making the lantern's flame dance wildly. For a split second, the shadows on the walls didn't follow. They moved on their own, twisting into shapes that were almost human before snapping back into place. Emma's mother, Lillian, her name was Lillian, stepped forward, her hands outstretched toward the lantern. Let me see. Lucas hesitated, then passed it to her. The moment her fingers closed around the handle, her entire body stiffened. Her eyes flew wide, the pupils dilating until only a thin ring of color remained. Oh, she breathed. Oh, you clever thing. Anna grabbed her shoulder. What? What is it? Lillian didn't answer. Instead, she turned the lantern upside down. The flame didn't go out. It didn't even flicker. It burned steadily upward, defying gravity, the glass remaining cool to the touch. And there, etched into the base where the words a keeper becomes a kept had once been, was a new phrase. The flame remembers. A sound like distant thunder rolled through the forest, making the ground tremble beneath their feet. The trees at the edge of the clearing swayed despite the lack of wind, their branches creaking like old bones. Thomas's head snapped up. We're not alone. Lucas felt it too, a presence, vast and ancient, stirring somewhere beyond the tree-line. Watching, waiting. The lantern's flame flared brighter, the blue and gold swirling together until they formed a single, unified light. Emma's voice, when it came, wasn't just in Lucas's head this time. It echoed from the lantern itself, clear and strong. Asterisk, it's coming. Asterisk. Lillian's hands shook around the lantern. What's coming? The shadows around them deepened, pooling at their feet like spilled ink. From within those pools, faces surfaced, Dozens of them, hundreds, all with their mouths open in silent screams. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. Asterisk the first fire. Asterisk, then the ground split open beneath them. Lucas barely had time to grab Anna's arm before the earth gave way, sending them all tumbling into the darkness below. The lantern fell from Lillian's grip, its light spinning wildly as it plummeted alongside them, illuminating flashes of the cavern walls as they fell. Walls lined with countless lanterns, all dark, all shattered. They hit the ground hard, the impact driving the air from Lucas's lungs. The lantern landed beside him, its glass cracking but not breaking, the flame inside burning steady despite the fall. Anna groaned, rolling onto her side. Where? The words died in her throat as she saw what surrounded them. They were back in the cavern, but it wasn't the same one they'd escaped. This cavern was older, its walls carved with symbols that made Lucas's eyes water if he looked at them too long. The twisted tree at the center was little more than a blackened stump, its branches reduced to skeletal fingers clawing at the empty air. And hanging from those branches weren't lanterns, but bodies. Dozens of them. Hundreds. All with their mouths sewn shut. All with their eyes wide open. Thomas made a sound low in his throat, backing away until he hit the cavern wall. This isn't possible. This place was destroyed. Lillian picked up the lantern, her face pale in its flickering light. No, we only ever saw part of it. This is deeper. This is where it began. The shadows at the edges of the cavern stirred, detaching from the walls, taking shape. Not the creature they'd fought above. Something older. Something hungrier. The first keeper stepped forward, its form shifting between human and something else. Its skin stretched too tight over bones that didn't sit right beneath the surface. Its mouth was stitched shut with black thread, but its eyes were the exact same blue gold as the lantern's flame. Lucas's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't just the first keeper. This was the first flame, the thing that had been trapped, contained, forced into the shape of a lantern all those centuries ago. And it was free now. The first flame tilted its head, studying them with those impossible eyes. When it spoke, its voice came not from its sealed mouth, but from the cavern itself, from the air, from the stone, from the very darkness between them. Asterisk, you broke the cycle. Asterisk, it wasn't a question. Lucas straightened, forcing himself to meet its gaze despite the primal terror screaming in his gut. Yes. The first flame smiled, the stitches over its mouth straining. Asterisk, good. Asterisk. Then it lunged. The lantern's flame roared to life, its light filling the cavern, searing away the shadows. But not the first flame. It passed through the light like water, its form dissolving and reforming as it reached for Lucas. Anna screamed a warning. Lucas raised his hands, the fire within him surging to meet the attack, and the world exploded in pain and light. When his vision cleared, he was no longer in the cavern. He stood in a field of golden grass under a starless sky. The first flame before him, its stitches now gone, its mouth curved into something almost human. Around them, the other keepers lay unconscious, their forms flickering like candle flames in the wind. The first flame reached out, its fingers brushing Lucas's chest. Not to harm, but to feel the fire burning within him. You carry a piece of me, it murmured. Asterisk, as do they, as did all who came before. Asterisk. Lucas swallowed hard. What do you want? The first flame's eyes burned brighter. Asterisk, what was taken from me? Asterisk. And with a whisper of motion, it turned toward the only one still standing besides Lucas. Toward Lillian, toward Emma's mother, toward the woman who had been the last keeper before the cycle broke, toward the one who had, centuries ago, helped trap in the first place. Lillian's eyes widened in realization. The first flame smiled. Justice. The golden field stretched endlessly in every direction, the starless sky pressing down like a leaden weight. Lillian took an unsteady step back, her hands raised, not in surrender, but in recognition. The fire within her flickered wildly, casting jagged shadows across the first flame's hollow face. You don't understand, she said, her voice steadier than her trembling hands. We didn't trap you. We saved you. The first flame smile twisted, its edges fraying like burning paper. Asterisk saved? Asterisk, its voice was the crackle of a dying fire, the hiss of steam on hot coals. Asterisk, you carved my bones into cages. You fed me on stolen breath and dying light. Asterisk, Lucas moved before he could think, placing himself between them. The fire in his chest roared in protest, the heat searing his ribs from within. Wait! A wave of force slammed into him, sending him skidding backward through the grass. The impact should have shattered bones, but the field itself seemed to cushion him, the golden blades bending beneath him like hands catching a falling child. The first flame didn't even glance his way. Its attention remained fixed on Lillian, its form shifting, stretching, until it mirrored her own features, her nose, her chin, the curve of her brow, but twisted wrong, like a reflection in warped glass. Show me, it whispered. Asterisk, show me the moment you decided I should burn. Asterisk, Lillian's breath hitched. The field around them darkened, the grass withering to blackened stalks as the memory rose unbidden. Asterisk, a younger Lillian standing in the same field, but alive with color. The sky above her a riot of stars. The lantern at her feet wasn't brass and glass, but woven from living flame, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. And before her, not the monstrous thing they now faced, but a being of pure radiance, its form shifting between human and wildfire and something far older. Asterisk. Asterisk, please, the radiant being begged, its voice the sound of a forest burning. They're coming. They'll devour me whole. Asterisk. Behind it, the horizon darkened with approaching shadows, things with too many teeth and not enough eyes, their hunger a physical weight in the air. Asterisk, Lillian reached for the flaming lantern. Then we hide you. Asterisk, the memory shattered like glass. The first flame reeled back, its stolen face contorting in rage. Asterisk, lies. You chained me. Asterisk, Lucas pushed himself up, his vision swimming. No, she was protecting you, from whatever those things were. The sky above them rippled, the starless void tearing open to reveal glimpses of something moving beyond, something vast and dark and hungry, the same shadows from Lillian's memory, drawn by the first flame's rage. Anna groaned, stirring beside Thomas. Oh, God, they're real? The first flame went very still. Its eyes, Lillian's eyes, darted to the ripping sky. For the first time, something like fear flickered across its stolen face. Lillian seized a moment. She stepped forward, her hands no longer trembling. We didn't know how else to keep you safe. The lantern was the only vessel strong enough. The ground beneath them trembled as the shadows pressed closer, their forms now visible through the tears in the sky. Endless, ravenous, drawn to the first flame's light like moths to a candle. The first flame looked down at its hands, at Lillian's hands, then at the unconscious keeper scattered around them. When it spoke again, its voice was quieter, almost lost beneath the growing howl of the approaching storm. Asterisk, you made me forget what I was. Asterisk, Lucas moved to stand beside Lillian, the fire in his chest burning brighter in the presence of the encroaching dark. Then remember now. The first flame's form flickered, the stolen features melting away, revealing the radiant being from Lillian's memory. But dimmer, weaker, its light guttering like a candle in the wind. The shadows shrieked in answer, the sound tearing at Lucas's eardrums, at his skin, at the fire inside him. He felt Emma stir within the flames, her presence surging forward in recognition, in terror. She'd seen these things before. She knew what they could do. The first flame turned its face to the crumbling sky. They've been feeding on me, it murmured, more to itself than to them. Asterisk, all this time in the dark, they've been feeding. Asterisk, Thomas grabbed Anna's arm, dragging her upright. We need to go. Now. Lillian didn't move. Her eyes were locked on the first flame, tears cutting tracks through the dirt on her face. I'm sorry, she whispered. We didn't know. The first flame looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. Its light pulsed once, twice, then steadied. Asterisk, now you do. Asterisk, it turned toward the tearing sky, toward the things clawing their way through, and spread its arms. The explosion of light was beyond anything Lucas had ever seen. Brighter than the sun, than supernovas, then the birth of stars. It tore through the field, through the sky, through the very fabric of the world, scouring away the shadows like cobwebs of furnace. The last thing Lucas heard before the light consumed him was the first flame's voice, soft and sad, and finally remembering. Asterisk, I am the spark that does not die. Asterisk, then darkness. And within it, the faint, steady glow of a single unbroken flame. The darkness clung to Lucas like a second skin, thick and suffocating. He gasped for air, his hands clawing at nothing, his body weightless in the void. For one terrifying moment, he couldn't remember who he was. Only the fire, the all-consuming fire that had burned through him, through everything. Then, a spark, a single, flickering ember floating in the dark. It pulsed once, weakly, before flaring to life, casting a dim golden glow across the endless black. Shapes emerged from the gloom, bodies floating motionless around him. Anna, Thomas, Lillian, the other keepers. Their forms were limp, their eyes closed, their chests still. The ember drifted toward Lucas, hovering just before his face. In its fragile light, he could see the truth. They weren't in the field anymore. They weren't anywhere. This was the in-between. The place after the light had burned everything away. The ember pulsed again, and Emma's voice, faint but unmistakable, whispered through the dark. Asterisk, take it. Asterisk. Lucas reached for the ember, his fingers trembling. The moment his skin made contact, heat lanced up his arm, spreading through his chest like liquid fire. His back arched as the flames took hold, his veins lighting up beneath his skin, his breath coming in ragged, smoke-tinged gasps. Memories that weren't his own flooded his mind. Asterisk, the first flame, newborn and brilliant, igniting in the heart of a dying star. Asterisk. Asterisk, the shadows, ancient and ravenous, slithering between worlds to devour it. Asterisk. Asterisk, the keepers, generation after generation, binding pieces of it away, hiding it, keeping it safe even as they forgot why. Asterisk. The ember in Lucas's palm grew brighter, its light pushing back the dark. One by one, the other keepers stirred, their own flames flickering to life as a spark passed between them, waking them from the void. Anna was the first to fully rouse, her hands flying to her throat as she gulped down air like a drowning woman breaking the surface. What? Where? Thomas groaned, rolling onto his side, his scarred face twisted in pain. The first flame, it's gone? Lucas looked down at the ember in his hand. It wasn't the first flame, not entirely, but it was a piece of it, a final, fading remnant. Lillian sat up slowly, her eyes fixed on the ember. No, she whispered. Not gone. Changed. The darkness around them shuddered, the emptiness itself seeming to recoil from their collective light. Something was watching them from a void, something that remembered the taste of fire. Emma's voice came again, stronger now. Asterisk, we need to leave. Asterisk. A sound like tearing fabric split the air as the darkness began to peel away, revealing jagged glimpses of the world beyond. Their world, the real one, but twisted, broken. The house stood in ruins. The forest beyond it reduced to smoldering husks of trees. The sky was a wrong color, a sickly violet streaked with veins of pulsating black. And the shadows, they were everywhere, crawling from the wreckage, oozing from the ground. Hungry, Anna grabbed Lucas's arm, her nails biting into his skin. We can't fight that. He knew she was right. The ember in his hand was barely a flicker compared to the all-consuming dark that now surrounded what was left of their world. But there was still one place untouched by the shadows, one place the darkness hadn't reached. The cavern. The original cavern, where this had all begun. Lucas closed his fingers around the ember, feeling its heat sear his palm. We're not fighting, he said. We're leaving. The other keepers turned to him, their faces pale in the dim light. How? Thomas demanded. Lucas didn't answer. Instead, he reached for Lillian's hand, then Anna's, forming a chain. One by one, the others followed, their flames intertwining, growing brighter with each new connection. The ember at the center pulsed in time with their heartbeats, its light cutting through the dark like a blade. And then, with a sound like shattering glass, the void broke. The world folded on itself, reality twisting as the keepers pushed, their combined fire tearing a path through the darkness. The shadows shrieked, their forms stretching, grasping, but the light burned too bright now, too hot. For a single, fleeting moment, Lucas saw it, the cavern, just as it had been before, the twisted tree at its center, the shattered lanterns lining the walls. A sanctuary, a prison, a beginning. Then the darkness surged forward, swallowing the vision whole. The ember in Lucas's hand guttered, its light fading. They weren't strong enough. Not yet. Emma's voice cut through the panic, clear and certain. Asterisk together. Asterisk. Lucas tightened his grip on the other's hands. Now! The keepers pulled. The void resisted, the shadows clinging like tar, but the fire burned brighter, hotter, until with one final, desperate surge, they moved. The cavern rushed up to meet them, its cold stone floor slamming into Lucas's back as the keepers tumbled into a heap, their flames sputtering but still burning. The air here was stale, thick with the scent of old smoke and damp earth. And they weren't alone. The first flame stood at the center of the cavern, its radiant form flickering weakly, its light barely enough to push back the dark that now pressed against the cavern walls. It turned to face them, its expression unreadable. Asterisk, you came back. Asterisk. Lucas pushed himself up, the ember still clutched in his hand. We didn't have a choice. The first flame's gaze dropped to the ember, its light pulsing in recognition. Asterisk, you took a piece of me. Asterisk, to remember, Lillian said softly. A shudder ran to the cavern as the shadows outside redoubled their efforts, their claws scraping against stone, their whispers slithering through cracks in the walls. The first flame looked at each of them in turn, its gaze lingering longest on Lucas. You cannot win this war, it said. Asterisk, not as you are. Asterisk, Anna bared her teeth. Then what do you suggest? The first flame smiled. Asterisk burned brighter. Asterisk, it reached out, its fingers brushing the ember in Lucas's hand. The moment they made contact, the fire roared to life, its light searing through the cavern, illuminating every corner, every crevice, and revealing the truth. The cavern wasn't empty. The walls were lined with bodies, countless keepers, their forms preserved in stone, their hands outstretched, their faces frozen in silent screams. And at the very center, beneath the twisted tree, stood a single, unbroken lantern. Its glass was blackened with age, its brass tarnished almost beyond recognition, but its flame still burned. The first flame stepped back, its light dimming further. The first lantern, it whispered. Asterisk, the one that started all. Asterisk. Lucas's breath caught in his throat. What's inside it? The first flame smile turned sad. Asterisk, what was left of me when they tore me apart. Asterisk. The shadows outside the cavern howled, their voices shaking the walls, sending cracks racing across the stone. They knew, they remembered, and they were coming. Lucas turned to the others, the ember in his hand blazing hotter than ever. We have to light it. Lillian's eyes widened. That's what they want. That's why they're here. For the last piece. The first flame shook its head. Asterisk, no. They're here because they're afraid. Asterisk, its gaze locked with Lucas's. Afraid of what happens when the flame is whole again. The ground trembled as the shadows forced their way inside, their inky forms spilling through the cracks like smoke. Lucas didn't hesitate. He ran for the lantern. The shadows screamed, and the world burned. The moment Lucas's fingers closed around the ancient lantern, time fractured. A shockwave of blue-gold fire erupted from the relic, sending the advancing shadows recoiling with shrieks that vibrated through bone and stone alike. The ember in Lucas's other hand flared white-hot, its light fusing with the lantern's dim flame in a cascade of sparks that danced like living things in the air. Anna screamed as the cavern walls trembled, chunks of rock crashing down around them. It's collapsing. Lillian grabbed Thomas's arm, dragging him toward the center as the first flame's radiant form flickered wildly, its light pulsing in time with the lantern's strengthening glow. Asterisk, hurry. Asterisk. Lucas barely heard them. The world had narrowed to the two flames, the ember in his palm and the ancient fire in the lantern, and the impossible space between them. He could feel Emma there, her presence woven through both, her voice whispering words he couldn't quite grasp. The shadows regrouped at the edges of the cavern, their inky forms coalescing into something massive. A towering figure with too many limbs and a gaping maw lined with teeth like shattered glass. It lunged, its claws slicing through the air where Lucas had stood a heartbeat before as he threw himself sideways. The lantern clutched tight against his chest. Thomas tackled a smaller shadow that had broken from the pack, his scarred hands burning as he wrestled it to the ground. "Do it now, Lucas." Lucas scrambled to his knees, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The lantern's glass was warm against his skin, the brass handle vibrating as if alive. He raised the ember. The massive shadow struck like a viper, one clawed hand closing around his ankle and yanking hard. Lucas hit the stone floor chin first, his teeth snapping together as the ember tumbled from his grip, rolling toward Lillian. "No!" Lillian dove, her fingers closing around the spark just as three smaller shadows converged on her. The moment she touched it, the ember detonated in a silent explosion of light, sending the creatures flying back with unearthly wails. Lillian gasped, her body going rigid as the fire raced up her arm, her veins lighting up like live wires beneath her skin. Her eyes, when it opened, burned with the same blue-gold radiance as the lantern's flame. The first flame staggered back, its form flickering wildly. "You!" Lillian rose, her movements unnaturally smooth, her voice layered with something ancient and powerful when she spoke. "They never told you, did they?" She turned her blazing gaze on the towering shadow, which now hesitated, its many eyes reflecting her light. The first keeper wasn't just a guardian. She took a step forward, and the ground itself trembled. She was your sister. The shadows froze. The massive creature let out a sound that might have been a whimper, its form shuddering. Lucas didn't wait. He lunged for the lantern, his fingers closing around it just as the first flame let out a cry. Not of pain, but of recognition. Asterisk Lena? Asterisk. The name hung in the air like a struck bell. The towering shadow convulsed, its edges fraying, its form collapsing inward as memories not its own tore through it. The smaller shadows writhed, their whispers rising to a cacophony of half-remembered voices. "We were supposed to share. You let them change you." Asterisk. "Why did you leave me in the dark?" Asterisk. Lillian, no, Lena, spread her arms, the ember's light now fully merged with her being. "I never left," she whispered. "I was always here, waiting for you to remember." The cavern shook as the first flame stumbled forward, its radiance guttering like a candle in the wind. Asterisk. You became human? Asterisk. "To keep the balance," Lena said softly. "To give the fire a home that could walk in the light and the dark." Lucas's hands trembled around the lantern. The pieces were falling into place. The generations of keepers, the fractured flame, the endless cycle. It had never been about containment. It had always been about reunion. The massive shadow let out an unearthly wail, its form dissolving as the truth tore through it. The smaller shadows thrashed, their whispers turning to screams as their stolen memories overwhelmed them. Anna grabbed Lucas's shoulder, her nails digging in. "Now, while they're weak." Lucas didn't hesitate. He thrust the lantern toward Lena, the flame inside flaring in recognition. "Do it." Lena's burning hands closed around the lantern. The moment she touched it, the cavern erupted in light, so bright it seared the shadows from existence, leaving only their echoes behind, whispers of what might have been, of what could still be. The first flame stepped forward, its radiance merging with Lena's, their forms flickering at the edges as they became something new, something whole. The lantern's flame roared higher, its light painting the cavern walls in shifting hues of blue and gold and deepest black. And then, silence. The shadows were gone. The first flame was gone. Only Lena remained, her human form flickering with residual power, the lantern now pulsing gently in her hands. Lucas exhaled shakily, his knees giving out as the adrenaline faded. "Is it over?" Lena looked down at the lantern, then at the cavern around them, at the preserved bodies of the keepers, their faces finally at peace. "No," she said softly. "It's just beginning." Outside the cavern, in the world beyond, The first true dawn in centuries was breaking, and somewhere in the light, something stirred, waiting, watching, hungry. The first rays of dawn painted the cavern walls in pale gold as Lucas and the others emerged from the depths. The air outside was crisp, carrying the scent of dew-laden grass and a faint, acrid tang of lingering smoke. The world looked different now, sharper, as if a veil had been lifted. Colors seemed brighter, shadows deeper. Lena carried the lantern carefully, her fingers tracing the newly repaired cracks in its glass. The flame inside burned steady, a perfect balance of blue and gold, its light casting no shadows on the ground. Anna rubbed her arms, her breath fogging in the cool morning air. What now? Thomas knelt, pressing his palm to the earth. The ground trembled faintly beneath his touch, a vibration more felt than heard. It's not over, he murmured. The shadows were just the beginning. Lucas turned to Lena. The fire that had burned so brightly within her was banked now, but not gone. Her eyes still held that impossible glow, her skin faintly luminous in the dim light. You knew, he said. All this time, you knew what the first flame really was. Lena's grip tightened on the lantern. I remembered in fragments. Dreams. Visions. The moment I touched the ember. She trailed off, her gaze distant. The first flame was never just fire. It was a bridge, a balance between light and dark. A branch snapped in the trees behind them. The group turned as one, their bodies tensing. The forest was too quiet. No bird song, no rustling leaves. Just silence. And then the whispering started. Not from the trees. From the air itself. Words layered upon words. Voices overlapping in a chorus that made Lucas's teeth ache. He couldn't understand them, not fully, but the intent was clear. Hunger, sharp and insatiable. Anna backed toward the group, her hands igniting with defensive fire. What is that? Lena's face paled. The other side, she whispered. The balance has shifted too far. They're coming through. The lantern's flame flickered wildly, its light dimming for the first time since the cavern. Thomas cursed, scanning the tree line. We need to move. Now! They ran, their footsteps pounding against the soft earth as the whispers grew louder, more distinct. The forest around them seemed to warp as they passed, tree trunks twisting into grotesque parodies of human forms, branches stretching like grasping fingers. Lucas risked a glance over his shoulder. The shadows were back, but not the ones they'd fought before. These were different, shapes with too many joints, their edges blurring like smoke, their eyes reflecting the lantern's light back at them in jagged fragments. And they were gaining. Lena skidded to a stop, so suddenly that Lucas nearly collided with her. Before them, the ground dropped away into a ravine, the other side impossibly far across. No, Anna breathed. This wasn't here before. The first of the creatures emerged from the trees, its form solidifying as it stepped into the lantern's fading light. It was vaguely humanoid, but stretched too tall, its limbs bending in impossible places, its mouth a yawning void filled with swirling darkness. Lena thrust the lantern into Lucas's hands. Take it. He barely had time to register the weight before she turned to face the creature, her arms spread wide. The glow beneath her skin intensified, burning through her clothes as blue-gold fire erupted from her palms. The creature hesitated, its void-like mouth twisting into something like recognition. You don't belong here, Lena said, her voice layered with power. This isn't your world. The creature tilted its head, then lunged. Lena met head-on, her fire blazing brighter than the rising sun. The impact sent shock waves through the ground, knocking the others off their feet. Lucas scrambled up just in time to see Lena grapple with the thing, her flames searing its shadowy flesh, its claws raking across her shoulders. Thomas grabbed his arm. We have to go around. Lucas shook his head, the lantern heavy in his grip. We can't leave her. A scream tore through the air. Anna, pointing at the tree line. More creatures were emerging, their forms shifting, adapting, learning. Lena's voice cut through the chaos, strained but steady. The lantern, Lucas, light the way. He didn't understand, not until he looked down and saw the lantern's flame sputtering, its light barely reaching past his feet. Emma's voice whispered through his mind, clearer than ever before. Asterisk. The first bridge was a lantern. The second is you. Asterisk. The realization hit like a physical blow. He was holding more than just fire. He was holding a doorway. Thomas and Anna formed a protective circle around him as Lucas raised the lantern high, pouring every ounce of his will into the flame. It responded instantly, the fire roaring upward in a column of intertwined blue and gold that pierced the morning sky. The effect was immediate. The creatures shrieked, some recoiling, others changing, their shadowy forms flickering between monstrous and almost human, as if the light was reminding them of something long forgotten. Lena took advantage of their hesitation, driving her flaming hands into her opponent's chest. The creature howled as the fire spread through its inky flesh, its form unraveling like thread from a spool. But more were coming. Too many. Lucas's arms shook with the effort of holding the lantern aloft, the heat searing his skin even as the fire refused to burn him. He could feel Emma there, guiding him, but it wasn't enough. They needed more. They needed. A hand closed around his wrist. Lena, her face streaked with soot and blood, her eyes blazing with borrowed fire. Together, she gasped. The moment their skin touched, the lantern's flame exploded outward, not just light but substance. A bridge of pure fire arcing across the ravine, its surface solid beneath their feet. The creatures wailed as one, their forms distorting further, some collapsing into puddles of living shadow, others changing, their edges softening, their eyes clearing. Anna didn't hesitate. She grabbed Thomas and hauled him onto the fiery bridge. Move! Lucas and Lena followed, the lantern's light forming a protective sphere around them as they ran. Behind them, the creatures gave chase, some attempting the bridge only to scream as the flames purified them, others falling back, hissing. Halfway across, the bridge began to waver. Lucas's vision blurred, the strain of maintaining the connection threatening to overwhelm him. Lena's grip on his wrist tightened, her fire merging with his, with the lantern's, with Emma's. The other side rushed up to meet them as the bridge collapsed, sending them tumbling onto solid ground in a tangle of limbs. The lantern rolled from Lucas's grip, its flame guttering but not going out. Silence. Then, a slow, deliberate clapping from the trees ahead. A figure stepped into the light, his face familiar, his smile chilling. Lucas's blood turned to ice. The former keeper, the thing that had worn his grandmother's face, stood before them, whole and unharmed, his hands still moving in mocking applause. Bravo, he said, his voice like oil on water. You've done exactly what I hoped you would. He gestured behind them. The ravine was gone. The creatures were gone. And the lantern's flame burned black once more. Lena staggered to her feet, her fire reigniting. You. The former keeper's smile widened. Me. His gaze shifted to Lucas. Did you really think it would be that easy? That after centuries of planning, I'd let you undo everything? Lucas reached for the lantern, but it skidded away from his grasp, sliding across the grass toward the former keeper, who laughed. The first flame was never the prize, he said, bending to pick it up. Just the key. He raised the lantern high, and the world screamed. The ground split open beneath them, not into a ravine this time, but into an endless void, a darkness so complete it hurt to look at. And in that darkness, something stirred, something old, something hungry. The former keeper's voice rang out, triumphant. Welcome home, sister. And from the void, a hand emerged, pale, perfect, and burning with black fire. The pale hand grasped the edge of the void, fingers digging into the earth like claws. A second hand followed. Then a shock of white hair as a face emerged, a face that mirrored Lena's in every perfect feature, but twisted with ancient malice. The figure pulled itself free from the darkness, its bare feet touching the grass without making a sound. The former keeper dropped to one knee, his head bowed in reverence. At last! The woman, if it could be called a woman, ignored him, her black fire eyes locked onto Lena, her lips curving into a smile that showed too many teeth. Little spark, she purred, her voice the sound of embers dying in the dark. You've been busy. Lena took an involuntary step back, the fire in her hands guttering. Impossible. You were destroyed. The creature laughed, the sound making the trees shudder. I am the dark to your light, the silence to your song. She stretched her arms wide, the black flames wreathing her body like a living cloak. Did you truly think you could burn me away? Lucas's pulse pounded his ears. He could feel Emma's terror through their connection, her presence recoiling from this thing that wore Lena's face. The lantern lay between them, its flame now completely black, the glass frosting over from some unnatural cold. Anna grabbed Thomas's arm, her whisper frantic. We need to run. The creature's head snapped toward them. Run. She clicked her tongue. But we're just getting acquainted. With a flick of her wrist, the shadows at their feet came alive, twisting around their ankles like vines. Lena surged forward, her fire flaring bright. Enough! The dark twin sighed, always so dramatic. She caught Lena's flaming wrist with ease, the black fire swallowing Lena's blue-gold light, without resistance. You gave up your power to walk among them, to love them. Disgust curled her lip, and look what it's made you, weak. Lucas lunged for the lantern, his fingers closing around the freezing brass. The moment he touched it, visions exploded behind his eyes. Asterisk a starless sky over an endless plain, two figures standing back to back, one wreathed in light, one in darkness. Asterisk. Asterisk a betrayal, a blade of shadow piercing radiant flesh. Asterisk. Asterisk a sundering, a scream that shattered worlds. Asterisk. He gasped, the pain tearing him back to present. The dark twin was watching him, her head tilted in curiosity. Ah, she murmured. The new vessel remembers. Thomas tore free of the shadows, his scarred hands igniting. Let them go. The dark twin sighed. Boring. She flicked her fingers, and Thomas flew backward as if struck by an invisible force, his body slamming into a tree with a sickening crunch. Anna screamed, her fire roaring to life as she launched herself at the creature. The dark twin didn't even move, just smiled as the shadows rose up to meet Anna, swallowing her flames, her screams, her very light. Lucas's breath came in ragged gasps. The lantern was a block of ice in his hands, its dark flame pulsing in time with his racing heart. He could feel Emma fighting within it, her presence flickering like a candle in the wind. Lena strained against her twin's grip, her fire sputtering. Why now? After all this time? The dark twin's smile faded. The walls are thinning. The great hunger wakes. She leaned closer, her breath like ash in Lena's face. And I want my other half back. The former keeper rose, brushing dirt from his knees. The ritual is prepared, my lady. The anchors are in place. Lucas's blood ran cold. Anchors, the lantern, the keepers. Emma, the dark twin, released Lena, shoving her away with a casual flick of her wrist. Bring them. The shadows surged forward, wrapping around Lena, around Lucas, dragging them toward the yawning void. Lena fought like a wild thing, her fire burning away the darkness as fast as it could reform, but it wasn't enough. Lucas clutched the lantern to his chest, his mind racing. There had to be a way, some weakness, some flaw in their plan. Emma's voice whispered through the chaos, faint but clear. Asterisk, the flame remembers. Asterisk, the words on the lantern's base. The dark twin paused at the edge of the void, her perfect face turning back toward them. Oh, little vessel, she crooned. Did you think your borrowed fire could stand against the original darkness? Lucas met her gaze, his fingers tightening on the lantern. No. Then he threw it at her feet. The glass shattered. The dark flame erupted upward in a column of pure blackness. And for the first time, the dark twin looked surprised. You fool, she hissed. That was your only protection. Lucas smiled. I know. And from the shattered lantern, Emma emerged, not as a whisper, not as a flicker of light, but as she had been in life, her form wreathed in blue-gold fire. The dark twin recoiled. No, you were supposed to be consumed. Emma stepped forward, the grass burning where she walked. The flame remembers, she said, her voice ringing with power, and it chooses. Lena's eyes widened in realization. She turned to Lucas, then to Emma, her own fire flaring bright in response. The dark twin screamed, a sound of pure, unfiltered rage, as the three fires merged, their light scouring away the shadows, sealing the void, burning away the lies that had held the world in darkness for centuries. The former keeper lunged, his hands outstretched, and turned to ash in the cleansing fire. The dark twin howled, her perfect form cracking like porcelain, the black fire around her guttering. "This isn't over," she spat. "The hunger comes." And when it does, the light burned brighter, and with one final, ear-splitting shriek, she was gone. Silence. Then a groan from the tree line. Thomas, stirring weakly, one hand pressed his ribs. Anna, coughing as the last of the shadows released her. And Lena, falling to her knees, her fire spent. Lucas stumbled forward, his legs barely holding him. Emma's form flickered, the fire sustaining her already fading. She turned to him, her smile sad. Not much time. Lucas reached for her, his fingers passing through hers in a shower of sparks. There has to be another way. Lena pushed herself up, her face drawn with exhaustion. There is. She looked at Emma, then at the shattered remains of the lantern. But the price is high. Emma nodded. I know. Thomas limped over, leaning heavily on Anna. Whatever it is, do it fast. He pointed to the horizon, where the rising sun was wrong. Too red, too hungry. The dark twin's final warning echoed in Lucas's mind. The great hunger wakes. Lena took a deep breath. The flame needs a vessel, not a prison, a home. She looked at Lucas. A living one. Emma's form flickered again, her edges blurring. It was always going to end this way. Lucas's throat tightened. No, there has to be. Emma touched his cheek, her fingers warm against the skin. Thank you, she whispered, for remembering me. Then she turned and stepped into Lena. The explosion of light sent Lucas reeling backward, his vision whiting out. When it cleared, Lena stood transformed, her hair now streaked with blue gold, her eyes burning with familiar fire. Emma's voice, when she spoke, was layered with Lena's. We don't have much time. The horizon darkened, the red sun bleeding into the sky like an open wound. The final battle was coming, and the lantern was no more. The unnatural red sun bled across the sky, staining the trees and grass in hues of rust and dried blood. Lucas wiped sweat from his brow, his fingers coming away smeared with soot and something darker, flecks of ash that stung his skin like tiny needles. The air itself felt wrong, thick with a metallic tang of impending storm, though no clouds marred the crimson heavens. Lena, or the being that was now both Lena and Emma, stood motionless a few paces ahead, her back rigid, her blue-gold streak hair stirring in a wind that didn't touch the rest of them. The fire within her burned visible beneath her skin, tracing glowing veins along her neck and hands. Thomas spat blood onto the grass, wincing as he pressed a hand to his cracked ribs. We need to move. Now. Anna helped steady him, her gaze darting between the horizon and Lena's transformed figure. She's not even breathing, she whispered. Lucas approached cautiously. Lena? Emma? The merge being turned, and for a heart-stopping moment, neither woman looked back at him. Just an ancient presence wearing their face. Then recognition flickered in those burning eyes, and her, asterisk their asterisk, voice emerged layered, harmonized. Asterisk, the hunger comes on swift wings. Asterisk, a sound like tearing fabric split the air, distant but growing closer. The trees at the edge of the clearing trembled, their leaves withering to blacken crisp before floating to the ground. Anna grabbed Lucas's arm. We can't fight that, not without the lantern. Lena Emma's head tilted, as if listening to something only they could hear. The lantern was never the true vessel, they said. Asterisk, only a placeholder, a crutch. Asterisk, their glowing hands flex at their sides. Asterisk, the fire lives where it chooses. Asterisk, Thomas limped forward, his jaw set, then choose to get us the hell out of here. Another tear in the air, closer this time. The grass beneath their feet browned and died in expanding circles, the decay spreading outward from nothing, from empty space itself. Lucas's pulse pounded in his throat. They're opening doors. Lena Emma nodded. Asterisk, the walls are thin now. The hunger has tasted this world before, through the cracks left by the dark twins passing. Asterisk, they turned fully to Lucas, their expression unreadable. Asterisk, you carry embers still. Asterisk, he didn't understand, not until they reached out and pressed a burning hand to his chest. Heat lanced through him, not pain but purification, scouring away the fatigue and fear, leaving only purpose. The world sharpened. He could see the tears now, not just hear them. Jagged fissures hanging in the air like invisible wounds, darkness oozing through. And beyond them, something vast moved, drawn by the scent of their light. Anna gasped as Lucas's hands ignited, blue-gold flames wreathing his fingers without burning. How? The fire remembers its keepers, Lena Emma said. They turned to Thomas, then Anna, placing a hand on each. Asterisk, all of them. Asterisk. Thomas arched as the fire took hold in him, his scars glowing like molten metal beneath his skin. Anna cried out, her hair lifting as if caught in an updraft, strands turning to flickering flame. The ground heaved. The nearest tear split wide, and the first of the hungering things crawled through. It was nothing like the shadows they'd faced before. This creature moved on too many jointed legs, its elongated body segmented like a centipede carved from void stuff, its maw a circular nightmare of rotating teeth. It smelled wrong, like ozone and rotting honey, the scent making Lucas's eyes water even as his new fire surged in response. Lena Emma stepped forward, their voice thunder and whisper all at once. Asterisk, this world is not yours. Asterisk, the creature hissed, its many legs scuttling sideways as it tested the air. More tears opened behind it, more shapes emerging. Things with too many eyes, things with none, things that seemed to flicker between solid and smoke. Anna raised her flaming hands, her voice shaking but clear. We can't let them spread. Thomas cracked his neck, his scars now glowing runes of power. Then we burn them back to whatever hell they crawled from. Lucas looked to Lena Emma. How we close the doors. Their smile held both sorrow and hope. Asterisk, the same way they were opened, with sacrifice. Asterisk, the first creature lunged. Chaos erupted. Thomas met head-on, his glowing fist slamming into its chitinous hide, the impact sending up sprays of black ichor that sizzled where they struck the grass. Anna whirled to face two smaller horrors that skittered toward her, her hair lashing like living fire, her hands weaving flames into barriers. Lucas moved on instinct, his body singing with newfound power. He grabbed a falling branch, dead before it hit the ground, and it burst a light in his grip, becoming a spear of pure flame. He drove it through a bulbous, gelatinous thing that oozed from another tear, the creature popping like a blister, its remains evaporating in puffs of noxious smoke. Lena Emma stood at the center of it all, their arms raised, their voice rising above the fray in a chant that made the very air vibrate. The largest tear, the one the first creature had emerged from, shuddered, its edges fraying like burned paper. The creature fighting Thomas shrieked, redoubling its efforts, its claws raking deep furrows in his chest. He bellowed in pain but held his ground, his fist now wreathed in white-hot fire. Anna danced between her attackers, her movements fluid as liquid flame, but Lucas could see her tiring, the fire within her guttering as the things kept coming, more and more pouring to the ever-growing tears. We're not enough, she shouted, barely dodging a barbed tendril. Lucas risked a glance at Lena Emma. Their chant continued, but blood now trickled from their nose, their ears, the strain of holding the tears from widening further clearly taking its toll. The realization struck like lightning. They needed more fire, more light, more keepers. But the lantern was gone. The embers were scattered. Unless... Lucas reached deep, past the fear, past the pain, to where Emma's presence still flickered within him. Show me, he begged. Asterisk, show me how to help them. Asterisk. A memory surfaced, not his own, but Emma's. The cavern, the twisted tree, the bodies preserved in its roots. Not corpses, anchors. Lucas's breath caught. Thomas, Anna, to me. They disengaged, falling back to form a loose circle around Lena Emma. The creatures hesitated, hissing and clicking, their forms pulsing with unnatural rhythms. Anna panted, her flames dim. "What's the plan?" Lucas pressed his hands to the earth, ignoring the burn as his fire seeped into the soil. "We call the others." Thomas's eyes widened in understanding. He followed suit, his scarred hands smearing glowing blood into the dirt. Anna didn't hesitate. She knelt, her fiery hair spreading across the dead grass like a living net. Lena Emma's chant faltered as they sensed a shift. Their gaze met Lucas's, and in that moment, he saw both women clearly. Lena's determination, Emma's love. "It will cost you," they warned. Lucas nodded. "I know." The ground trembled, then erupted. Skeletal hands burst from the soil, not to drag them down but to rise. Countless keepers, their forms wreathed in ghostly flame, their hollow eyes burning with renewed purpose. They stood in silent ranks, a legion of the long dead, their presence making the very air hum. The hungering things recoiled, their clicking rising to panic shrieks. Lena Emma raised her arms higher, their voice now joined by the whispers of 1,000 keepers. Asterisk, this world is not yours. Asterisk, the nearest tear screamed as it ripped apart, the edges burning away to nothing. The creatures caught in its collapse writhed, their forms unraveling like knotted thread. One by one, the other tiers followed, consumed by the collective fire of every keeper who had ever lived. The largest tear, the first, held out longest, its edges writhing as something immense pressed against it from the other side. A single, lidless eye peered through, its pupils slit like a cat's, its gaze sending Lucas's mind skittering toward madness. Lena Emma stepped forward, their body glowing like a star. "Go back," they commanded. The eye blinked, and the world shattered. The backlash sent Lucas flying, his body skidding across the scorched earth. He rolled to his knees in time to see Lena Emma engulfed in a column of blue-gold fire, their forms silhouetted against the dying tier, their arms outstretched in final sacrifice. The last thing he heard before the light consumed everything was Emma's voice, clear and strong. Asterisk, the flame remembers. Asterisk, then silence. The tears were gone. The creatures were gone. The keeper ghosts were gone. And Lena Emma, Lucas crawled forward, his hands raw, his vision swimming. The ground where they'd stood was now a circle of glass, smooth and perfect, reflecting the now clear sky. At its center lay a single, unbroken ember. Anna's sob broke the stillness. Thomas slumped beside her, his scars now just scars again, his fire spent. Lucas reached for the ember, his fingers closing around its warmth. It pulsed once, weakly, before settling into a steady glow. Somewhere in the distance, a bird sang. The world continued, but nothing would ever be the same. The ember pulsed in Lucas's palm like a tiny heartbeat, its warmth radiating through his fingers and up his arm in soothing waves. Around him, the scorched earth began to heal, tiny green shoots pushing through blackened soil, the skeletal trees sprouting new buds despite the season. The unnatural red hue had faded from the sky, leaving behind the soft blue of a normal autumn afternoon. Anna wiped blood from her split lip, her hands no longer burning, but shaking violently from exhaustion. "Is it over?" Thomas groaned as he rolled onto his back, staring at the sky. His scars had returned to normal, pale, raised lines against the skin rather than glowing brands. For now, Lucas didn't answer. His attention remained fixed on the ember, where faint whispers swirled just beneath the surface. Fragments of Emma, of Lena, of countless other keepers who had given themselves to the flame. The weight of their sacrifice pressed against his chest like a physical thing. A shadow fell across him. Lucas looked up to find a stranger standing at the edge of the glass circle. A man with silver-streaked hair and eyes that reflected the ember's light a little too perfectly. His clothes were oddly out of place, a heavy wool coat despite the mild weather, the cuffs frayed with age. "You shouldn't hold on to that too tightly," the man said, his voice rough with an accent Lucas couldn't place. "Burns tend to linger." Thomas was on his feet instantly, swaying but determined. "Who the hell are you?" The stranger smiled, revealing teeth slightly too white, slightly too even. A concerned bystander. His gaze flicked to the ember, though I suppose bystander isn't quite accurate anymore. Lucas stood slowly, his muscles protesting every movement. The ember's warmth spread through his palm, sinking deeper into his skin the longer he held it. "You know what this is?" "Of course." The man tilted his head, studying Lucas with unsettling intensity. "Just as I know you've made a terrible mistake." Anna stepped forward, her fists clenching despite her exhaustion. "What are you talking about?" The stranger sighed, as if explaining something painfully obvious to children. "The flame was never meant to be whole again. That's why it was split in the first place." He gestured to the ember. "And now you've gone and given it a new vessel." Lucas's blood ran cold. He looked down at the ember, at the way it seemed to be sinking into his skin, the edges blurring as it bonded with him. "You're lying." The man's smile faded. "Am I?" He reached into his coat and withdrew an object that made Lucas's breath catch. A lantern. Not the one they'd shattered, but its twin, the glass cloudy with age, the brass tarnished black. Inside, a single blue flame flickered weakly. Thomas made a choke sound. "That's impossible." "Not impossible." The stranger's fingers tightened around the lantern. "Just forgotten." He met Lucas's gaze. There were always two lanterns, two flames, one to keep the light, one to hold the dark. His lips twisted. "You broke the balance." The ember in Lucas's hand flared, sending a spike of heat up his arm. The whispers within grew louder, more insistent. Warning or encouragement, he couldn't tell. Anna grabbed Lucas's shoulder. "Don't listen to him. He could be one of them." The stranger laughed, a dry, humorless sound. If only it were that simple. He turned the lantern in his hands, revealing markings etched into the base. Words Lucas couldn't read, but somehow understood. "The keeper becomes the kept." The same words that had been on their lantern. The same words that now burned in Lucas's palm. The stranger's expression turned grim. "They're coming, boy. The real hungers. The ones that don't bother with shadows and whispers." He nodded to the ember. "And they'll tear this world apart to get to that." Lucas's mouth went dry. "Why tell us this?" "Because someone has to fix what you broke." The stranger's eyes gleamed in the fading light. "And I'd rather it not be me." With that, he turned and walked away, his form blurring at the edges as he reached the tree line, as if he wasn't entirely there to begin with. Silence settled over the clearing, broken only by the distant cry of a crow. Thomas exhaled sharply. "We need to move. Now." Anna nodded toward Lucas's hand. "What about that?" Lucas flexed his fingers. The ember was gone, fully absorbed, its heat now a constant presence beneath his skin. The whispers remained, faint but insistent. Emma's voice rose above the others. "Clear as crystal. Asterisk, find the others." Asterisk. Lucas looked up, meeting his friend's wary gazes. "This isn't over." The ground beneath them trembled, not violently, but enough to send a fresh wave of unease through them. Somewhere in the distance, a tree cracked and fell. Thomas grabbed Lucas's arm, his grip painfully tight. "Then we finish it." Anna nodded, her jaw set. Together, the ember pulsed in response, its warmth spreading through Lucas's chest like liquid courage. Somewhere in the world, another lantern waited, and the hungers were waking. The forest grew darker as they moved, the trees pressing around them like silent sentinels. Lucas led the way, his ember-embedded palm pulsing with a faint glow that illuminated the path just enough to keep them from stumbling over roots and rocks. The heat beneath his skin had settled into a steady thrum, like a second heartbeat, keeping time with his own. Anna walked beside him, her fingers brushing the bark of each tree they passed, leaving faint smudges of soot behind. "This doesn't feel right," she murmured. The woods were never this thick before. Thomas brought up the rear. His breathing labored from his injuries. "It's not the woods that changed." Lucas knew what he meant. The ember was changing them, heightening their senses, warping their perception. Colors looked sharper, sounds clearer. Even the air tasted different, thick with the scent of impending rain and something else, something metallic and old. A twig snapped somewhere to their left. All three froze. The forest held its breath. Then a whisper, so faint it might have been wind. "Keeper?" Lucas's palm burned suddenly. the ember flaring bright enough to cast their shadows against the trees. The whisper came again, closer now. Asterisk. You carry what does not belong to you. Asterisk. Anna's hands ignited on instinct, the flame smaller than before, but just as fierce. Show yourself. The trees shuddered. A figure stepped into the dim circle of light. A woman with skin like weathered parchment, her hair a tangled mass of vines and dried leaves. Her eyes were hollow pits, her mouth stitched shut with what looked like spider silk. Thomas sucked in a sharp breath. Another keeper? The woman shook her head, raising hands that ended in gnarled, root-like fingers. She pointed at Lucas's glowing palm, then to the east, where the trees grew even denser. Emma's voice whispered through Lucas's mind. Asterisk, she's a sentinel. One of the first. Asterisk, the root woman stepped closer, her stitched mouth working as if trying to form words around the threads. A single drop of black liquid seeped from one eye, carving a path down her cracked cheek. Anna lowered her flaming hands, slightly. What's she trying to say? The answer came not from the woman, but from the trees themselves, a chorus of creaking wood and rustling leaves forming words. Asterisk, the second lantern wakes. Asterisk, the root woman reached out, her finger brushing Lucas's chest just over his heart. The contact sent a jolt through him, and for a split second he saw. Asterisk, a city he didn't recognize, its skyline dominated by a towering cathedral with blackened spires. Asterisk, a vault deep beneath the earth, its walls lined with extinguished lanterns. Asterisk, a single blue flame flickering behind glass, its light pulsing in time with his own ember. Asterisk. Then the vision was gone and the root woman with it, her form dissolving into the undergrowth like mist in morning sun. Thomas exhaled sharply. Well, that wasn't ominous at all. Lucas flexed his hand, the ember's glow pulsing faster now, as if agitated. We need to get to that city. Anna frowned. What city? You didn't say anything about. The one with the cathedral. Lucas interrupted. Black spires. Underground vault. He met her gaze. The second lantern is there, and it's waking up. A gust of wind tore through the trees, carrying with it the scent of smoke and something sweetly rotten. The ember's light dimmed suddenly, as if something had sucked the energy from the air itself. Thomas went rigid. We're being hunted. Lucas didn't ask how he knew. The certainty settled over them all at once, the primal understanding of prey sensing a predator. Emma's voice came again, urgent now. Asterisk run. Asterisk. They ran. The forest seemed to fight them, branches snagging their clothes, roots rising to trip their feet. Behind them, the darkness moved, not as shadows this time, but as something more solid, more hungry. The trees they passed withered in its wake, leaves crumbling to dust before they even hit the ground. Anna risked a glance back and immediately wished she hadn't. Faster. Lucas's lungs burned, his legs threatening to give out. But the ember pushed him onward, its heat spreading through his limbs like adrenaline. The tree line was just ahead, the setting sun painting the open fields beyond in hues of orange and gold. They burst from the woods just as the thing behind them let out a sound that was neither growl nor scream, but something infinitely worse. The noise a star might make as it died. Thomas stumbled, his injuries finally overcoming him. Anna grabbed his arm, hauling him forward as the first tendrils of darkness lashed at their heels. Lucas turned, raising his ember-embedded hand like a shield. The light flared, pushing back the encroaching dark just enough for Anna to drag Thomas to safety. The darkness recoiled, hissing like steam on hot coals. For a heartbeat, it seemed to hesitate, swirling at the forest edge as it held back by some unseen barrier. Then it struck. The impact sent Lucas flying backward, his body skidding across the damp grass. The ember in his palm screamed, an actual audible sound that made his ears bleed. The darkness reared up, forming into something vaguely humanoid, its featureless face leaning in close, as if to sniff him. Mine! It whispered. Lucas swung his glowing fist, connecting with the thing's face. Light exploded outward, searing away the darkness like paper in a furnace. The creature howled, its form unraveling, but more tendrils were already surging forward from the trees to replace it. Anna's hands closed around Lucas's shoulders, yanking him to his feet. Move! They ran across the open field, the embers light their only guide as night fell in earnest. Behind them, the forest groaned, the darkness spilling outward in waves, consuming everything in its path. Thomas pointed ahead, to where the silhouette of a small town flickered in the distance. There! We can lose it there. Lucas wasn't so sure. The ember pulsed wildly in his hand, its whispers rising to a panic crescendo. Whatever was chasing them wouldn't be shaken so easily, and the second lantern was still miles away. The first true stars began to appear overhead, cold, distant pinpricks of light that offered no comfort. Somewhere in the dark, something laughed, and the chase continued. The town ahead flickered like a dying candle as they sprinted across the open field. Lucas's breath came in ragged gasps, the ember in his palms searing hotter with each step, as if reacting to the approaching darkness at their backs. The whispers inside it had grown into a chorus of overlapping voices, some warning, some pleading, some screaming in languages long forgotten. Anna gripped Thomas's arm, half dragging him as his injuries slowed their pace. Almost there. The first houses rose before them, weather-clabbered buildings with darkened windows and sagging porches. No lights burned within. No smoke curled from the chimneys. The entire town lay still as a grave beneath the star-strewn sky. Lucas skidded to a halt at the edge of the main street, his skin prickling with unease. Something's wrong. Thomas leaned against a rusted water pump, his face pale with pain. No kidding. Place looks deserted. Anna stepped forward, her boots crunching on broken glass. Not deserted. She pointed to the ground, where deep grooves scored the dirt, claw marks wider than a man's hand. Something lives here. The ember flared suddenly, its light painting the nearest buildings in stark relief. Shadows pooled unnaturally thick beneath the raised sidewalks, swirling like oil on water. From within them came a sound. Not the hungry pursuit of the forest creature, but something worse. Laughter, high-pitched, giggling, children's laughter. Lucas's blood turned to ice. We need to go. Now. Too late. The first of them crawled from the shadows. A child, or something wearing a child's skin. Its limbs bent backward at the joints, its fingers elongating as it moved, nails clicking against the wooden planks. Its eyes reflected the ember's light in perfect twin points of blue. Then it smiled, revealing teeth like shattered glass. "Keeper," it hissed, "you brought us a gift." More shapes emerged from the dark, dozens of them, all children, all wrong. Their skin stretched too tight over bones that shifted beneath the surface. Their laughter rose to a cacophony that made Lucas's ears ache. Thomas pushed out the pump, his fists clenching. What the hell are these things? Anna's hands ignited, the flame smaller than before, but burning steady. Not children, never children. The first creature tilted its head, its neck cracking audibly. "We were," it said, its voice layered with something ancient and cruel, "before the hunger took us." It pointed a too long finger at Lucas's glowing hand. "Before the flame left us in the dark." Emma's voice cut through the whispers in Lucas's mind. Asterisk, they're echoes, fragments of keepers who failed. Asterisk, the creature's smile widened. "She's right, and we want what you have." It lunged. Lucas reacted on instinct, swinging his ember-embedded hand in a wide arc. The moment his light touched the creature, it screamed, a sound that shook the windows in their frames, and burst into a cloud of ash and sparks. The others froze, their laughter dying. Anna didn't hesitate. She surged forward, her flaming hands carving through the nearest creatures like a scythe through wheat. Thomas followed, his strength renewed by adrenaline, his fists crushing skulls and snapping spines with brutal efficiency. But for every one they felled, two more took its place, crawling from beneath porches, slithering out of rain barrels, dropping from rooftops with bone-snapping impacts. Lucas fought back to back with his friends, the embers light their only weapon against the endless tide. Each creature destroyed cost them. Anna's flames guttered lower with each use. Thomas's movements grew sluggish, and Lucas's arm burned as if the ember were eating through muscle and bone to maintain its glow. A particularly large creature, a boy with his mouth sewn shut and eyes like black pits, darted past their defenses, its claws raking across Lucas's chest. Pain flared hot and immediate, but the ember responded instantly, its heat sealing the wounds in streaks of glowing scar tissue. The creature hissed, recoiling, "You're changing already." Lucas didn't have time to process the words. The horde pressed closer, their numbers overwhelming. They needed an out. Now! Emma's voice rose above the chaos. Asterisk, the church. Asterisk. Lucas's gaze snapped to the end of the street, where a small white chapel stood, its steeple crooked but intact. Unlike the other buildings, no shadows pooled around its foundation. No creatures crawled from its doors. "Anna, Thomas, to the church." They fought their way down the street, the creatures shrieking and clawing at their heels. The chapel doors were locked, but a single kick from Thomas sent them splintering inward. The moment they crossed the threshold, the creatures stopped, hissing and spitting like cats in the rain. They clustered at the edge of the light spilling from the doorway, their forms twitching with barely restrained hunger. The largest, the boy with sewn-shut mouth, cocked its head. "It won't protect you forever, Keeper. The hunger is waking, and when it does..." It licked its jagged teeth. "We'll be waiting." Then they were gone, melting back into the shadows from whence they came. Silence settled over the chapel, broken only by their ragged breathing. Anna slumped against the pew, her flames extinguishing. What were those things? Thomas wiped blood from his face. "You heard them. Failed keepers." He turned to Lucas. "Is that what happens if..." "No." Lucas flexed his hand, the embers glow pulsing in time with a heartbeat. "There's something else. Something older." The chapel's interior was simple: wooden pews, a plain altar, and behind it, a stained glass window depicting a lantern held aloft by faceless figures. Moonlight streamed through, casting fractured colors across the dusty floor. Emma's presence stirred within the ember. Asterisk looked closer. Asterisk. Lucas approached the window, his breath catching as the ember's light interacted with the glass. The image shifted, the colors rearranging to form a map, a winding path through mountains, ending at a city marked by a towering cathedral. Anna came up beside him. "Is that..." "Where we need to go," Lucas finished. Thomas traced the route with a bloody finger. "That's hundreds of miles, through the Black Peaks." He met Lucas's gaze. "We'll never make it in time." The ember flared, its heat intensifying. Lucas's vision swam, and suddenly he saw Asterisk, a train rumbling through the night, its cars empty save for shadows that moved against the walls. Asterisk, a conductor with no face, his hands gloved in human skin. Asterisk, a ticket clutched in his own fist, the destination clear. Last light station. Asterisk. The vision faded, leaving behind a single word whispered by 100 voices. Asterisk, hurry. Asterisk. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the chapel's windows. The creature's laughter echoed in the distance, growing louder, closer. They were coming back. Lucas turned to his friends, the ember's light reflecting in their wide, terrified eyes. "We're not going by foot." He pointed to the map's starting point, a tiny train depot marked in red glass. "We're taking the Night Express." Anna's face paled. "That's not a real train." "It is now." Thomas pushed away from the altar, his jaw set. "And if we're boarding that hell ride, we'll need weapons." He nodded to a trapdoor near the pulpit, half hidden beneath a moth-eaten rug. Churches always keep supplies. The trapdoor groaned as they lifted it, revealing a set of stairs descending into darkness. The scent of old blood and gunpowder wafted up, along with something else. Something that made the ember in Lucas's hand pulse in recognition. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. Asterisk, we're not the first to come this way. Asterisk. Lucas took the first step down, the ember's light revealing rows of wooden crates, their lids pried open to show gleaming silver blades and glass vials of liquid fire. But at the far end of the cellar, something else waited. A figure in a tattered keeper's cloak, long dead, its skeletal hands clutching a journal. And on the wall behind it, scrawled in what could only be blood, a single phrase. Asterisk, The second lantern must never wake. Asterisk. The ground trembled, dust sifting from the ceiling. The creatures were at the chapel doors now, their claws scraping against the wood. Time was up. Lucas grabbed the journal and turned to his friends. Take what you can carry. We leave in 2 minutes. Anna hefted a silver dagger, its edge gleaming wickedly in the ember's light. And if the train won't take us? Lucas flexed his burning hand. It will. Above them, the chapel doors splintered. The laughter returned, and the hunt began anew. The cellar air tasted of rust and old gunpowder as Lucas shoved the dead keeper's journal into his coat. Anna strapped silver daggers across her chest, the blades gleaming dully in the ember's pulsing light. Thomas loaded glass vials of liquid fire into a bandolier, his scarred fingers moving with practiced efficiency despite the pain tightening his features. Above them, the chapel doors groaned under relentless assault. With splintered, hinges screamed. The children things' laughter spiraled into shrieks of glee as they forced their way inside. Lucas grabbed a short sword from the nearest crate, its edge etched with symbols that made his eyes water if he stared too long. Move. Now. They fled through a narrow tunnel at the cellar's rear, a smuggler's passage, its walls slick with condensation, its ceiling hung with cobwebs thick as rope. The ember's glow revealed footprints in the damp earth, some fresh, others so old they might have been made centuries ago. Anna ran a hand along the wall, her fingers coming away sticky with something that wasn't water. This isn't just an escape route. It's a trail. Thomas adjusted his bandolier with a grimace. For keepers, the tunnel sloped upward, the air growing colder with each step. Behind them, wet scrambling sounds echoed. The creatures giving chase, their twisted limbs scuttling through the dark. Lucas's ember flared, its heat intensifying as Emma's voice rose above the whispers. Asterisk. The depot is close, but the train won't wait. Asterisk. A rusted ladder appeared ahead, its rungs disappearing into a circular opening where pale moonlight spilled through. Lucas climbed first, his boots slipping on the slick metal. The hatch at the top resisted for one heart-stopping moment before bursting open with a shower of rotten leaves. They emerged in a graveyard. Weathered headstones leaned at drunken angles, their inscriptions worn smooth by time. At the center stood a mausoleum, its marble facade cracked and blackened as if by fire. Beyond iron gates, the town burned, not with normal flames, but with eerie blue fire that consumed without spreading, leaving structures intact even as they blackened and crumbled. Anna sucked in a sharp breath. The children aren't following. Thomas turned, his scars standing out starkly in the unnatural light, because something worse is coming. The ground trembled. A low, rhythmic thudding shook the earth. Footsteps too heavy to be human, approaching from the direction of the chapel. Trees at the graveyard's edge splintered, their trunks snapping like kindling as a massive shape shouldered through. Lucas's ember seared his palm in warning. Run! They sprinted past the mausoleum, toward the far gates where a single lantern burned with ordinary yellow flame. The depot lay beyond, a crumbling platform beside rusted tracks that shouldn't have seen use in decades. Yet as they neared, a distant whistle pierced the night, mournful and long. The thing behind them roared, the sound vibrating through Lucas's bones. He risked a glance back and immediately wished he hadn't. It stood easily 10 feet tall, its body a patchwork of stitched-together flesh, some human, some animal, all rotting, where its face should have been gaped a circular maw lined with rows of needle teeth, its breath steaming the cold air despite the heat rolling off its corpse flesh. Anna fumbled with a vial. Distraction! She hurled the glass at the creature's feet. It shattered, releasing a conflagration that engulfed the monstrosity in white-hot flames. The thing howled, batting at itself with hands that blackened and curled like burning paper. Thomas didn't waste a reprieve. He slammed through the depot gates, Lucas and Anna close behind. The platform was empty save for a single bench and a ticket booth with boarded-up windows. The tracks gleamed oddly in the moonlight, their rails too perfect, too new compared to decay around them. Another whistle, closer now. A vibration thrummed through the tracks, building rapidly. The air itself seemed to warp, pressure mounting until Lucas's ears popped painfully. Then the night express arrived, not with roar of steam and grinding wheels, but in utter silence. One moment the tracks were empty, the next a massive black locomotive stood before them, its engine cowled in what looked like stretched human skin, its windows dark despite the flicker of movement within. The cars behind it stretched into the distance, far longer than any normal train. The conductor stepped down from the lead car, tall, gaunt, his face obscured by a veil of shifting shadows that writhed like living things. His uniform was pristine, his gloves gleaming white under the depot's lone lantern. "Tickets," he intoned, his voice hollow, as if speaking from the bottom of a well. Lucas stepped forward, his ember hand raised. The conductor tilted his head, the shadows across his face parting momentarily to reveal nothing, just an endless void where features should have been. "Ah," the conductor said. "A keeper." He reached into his coat and produced 3 slips of paper, each marked with symbols that squirmed on the page. "Last light station. One way." Thomas took the tickets hesitantly. "What's the fare?" The conductor's void face turned toward the graveyard, where the burning creature had begun moving again, its charred flesh sloughing off to reveal glistening muscle beneath. "You're paying it now." Anna boarded first, her dagger still drawn. Thomas followed, his bandolier clinking with each step. Lucas hesitated at the threshold. "How many keepers have you carried?" The conductor's gloved hand rested on his shoulder, cold even through layers of clothing. "All of them." "And none." He leaned close, his breath smelling of old coal and something sweetly rotten. "The train remembers what the world forgets." A shudder ran through the cars as the creature reached the platform, its maw gaping wide. Lucas boarded, the doors sealed behind him with a finality that echoed in his bones. Through the window, he watched the conductor step calmly into the creature's path, one white-gloved hand raised. The last thing Lucas saw before the train lurched into motion was the creature dissolving like smoke and wind. Its horrified shriek cut abruptly short. Then the world outside the windows blurred, the train accelerating to impossible speeds. The interior was all plush red velvet and polished brass, the air thick with the scent of old roses, and something beneath it, something metallic and cold. Anna collapsed into a seat, her daggers clattering to the floor. "That thing back there, it wasn't like the others. It knew us." Thomas examined his ticket, the symbols now still. It knew the ember. Lucas flexed his hand, the glow pulsing in time with the train's rhythm. Emma's voice was faint now, as if drained by their escape. "Asterisk, rest while you can. The real journey begins at last light." Asterisk. The other passengers watched silently from shadowed seats, figures with faces that shifted when looked at directly, their hands clutching tickets of their own. None spoke, none moved, but Lucas felt their attention like a physical weight. A compartment door slid open further down the car, revealing a dining area where a single place had been set. The meal steamed despite the train's chill, the scent of roasted meat and herbs making Lucas's stomach growl despite his unease. Thomas stood abruptly. "Don't touch it." Anna eyed the cutlery, all silver, all etched with the same symbols as their weapons. "Why? What is it?" "Supper for the dead," whispered a voice in the seats behind them. Lucas turned to find an old woman watching them, her face a road map of wrinkles, her eyes milky with cataracts. Unlike the other passengers, she seemed solid, real. A tattered keeper's cloak was draped over her shoulders. She smiled, revealing gums studded with iron nails. "You'll want your strength, children. The cathedral's bells are already ringing." She pointed a gnarled finger at Lucas's ember hand. "And he hears them." The train plunged into a tunnel, plunging the car into utter darkness save for Lucas's glowing palm. When the lights returned seconds later, the old woman was gone. In her place sat the journal from the chapel cellar, its pages now open to an illustration that made Lucas's blood run cold, a cathedral with blackened spires, its doors yawning open to reveal an endless procession of figures carrying lanterns. And at the center, towering over them all, a shape with too many arms and a mouth that split its face vertically rather than horizontally. The caption beneath read, "Asterisk, the first keeper waits." Asterisk, The train whistle blew again, long and mournful. Somewhere ahead, a bell began to toll. The tolling bell reverberated through the train car, each peal sending vibrations through Lucas's bones. The journal's illustration seemed to pulse in time with the sound, the ink lines shifting minutely as if the depicted cathedral breathed. Anna slammed the book shut, her fingers leaving smudges on the aged leather. We need to get off this train. Thomas peered out the window with a landscape blurred past at impossible speeds. No longer field or forest, but swirling gray mist shot through occasional flashes of light that might have been eyes or stars or something else entirely. Bit late for that. The compartment door slid open with a hiss. The conductor stood framed in the doorway, his shadow stretching unnaturally long across the carpeted floor. His void face turned toward Lucas. Last light approaches. The temperature in the car plummeted. Frost spiderwebbed across the windows as the other passengers stirred for first time, their shadowed faces turning in unison toward the front of the train. A collective sigh moved through them, a sound like wind through dead leaves. Lucas's ember flared, its heat pushing back the sudden cold. What happens when we arrive? The conductor's gloved hands flexed. The bell calls. The hungered wake. The keepers walk. He tilted his head, the void where his face should have been somehow conveying amusement. And the train moves on. Anna gripped her daggers tighter. Cryptic bastard. A shudder ran through the cars as the train began slowing, the blur outside resolving into shapes, tall, jagged spires piercing a blood-red sky. The mist clung to ground like living fog, parting occasionally to reveal cobblestone streets empty of all but scattered bones. Thomas pressed his face to glass. That's not a city. That's a graveyard. The journal in Lucas's hands grew heavier, its cover now warm to the touch. Emma's voice whispered through his mind. Asterisk, the first keeper built his prison well. Asterisk, the train glided to a silent stop at a platform of blackened bone. The sign above read Last Light Station in letters that oozed dark liquid down the rusted metal. The other passengers remained seated, their ticket stubs clutched in skeletal hands. The conductor opened the doors. A gust of wind carried in the scent of old blood and burning hair. The bell tolled again, the sound coming from somewhere beyond the station, deep within the city of spires. Lucas stepped onto the platform first, his embers glow pushing back the clinging mist. The cobblestones beneath his feet were carved with the same symbols as their weapons, the grooves filled with something that shone faintly in the dim light. Anna and Thomas followed, their breaths fogging in the unnatural cold. Behind them, the train doors hissed shut. When Lucas turned, the night express was already gone, leaving only empty tracks stretching into nothingness. A new sound joined the bell's toll, a wet, rhythmic slapping coming from one of the side streets. Thomas drew a vial of liquid fire. When not alone, the creature that emerged was neither shadow nor corpse, but something in between, a mass of writhing tendrils wrapped around a humanoid core, its face a shifting mosaic of stolen features. It moved with jerky, uncoordinated motions, as if learning to use its stolen limbs. When it spoke, its voice was a chorus of screams harmonized into something almost musical. Asterisk, keeper of the sunder flame. The first has waited so long. Asterisk, Lucas raised his ember hand, the light making the creature recoil. Take us to him. The thing laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Asterisk, no need, little torch. He is already here. Asterisk, the ground trembled. The bell tolled once more, the sound shaking dust from the crumbling buildings. And from the heart of the dead city, something began to move. The ground trembled as the first keeper emerged from the heart of the dead city, a towering figure of fused bone and shadow, his form shifting between human and something far older. His mouth split his face vertically, rows of teeth glinting like broken glass in the dim light. His many arms stretched outward, each ending in hands that clutched extinguished lanterns. Lucas stood frozen, the ember in his palm pulsing wildly. The whispers inside it had fallen silent. Even Emma's voice had gone quiet, as if in reverence or fear. Anna's grip on her daggers tightened, her knuckles white. We can't fight that. Thomas exhaled sharply, his scars standing out starkly against his ashen face. We don't have to. The first keeper took a single, earth-shaking step forward. His voice was the sound of 1,000 lanterns shattering at once. Asterisk, you carry what was lost. Asterisk, Lucas lifted his ember hand, the glow pushing back the oppressive darkness. I carry what was given. The first keeper paused. His many eyes, scattered across his form like stars in a void, flickered with something like recognition. Then, slowly, he knelt. The city held its breath. The first keeper extended one massive hand, palm up. In its center rested a single, unlit wick. Asterisk, the choice is yours, last keeper. Asterisk, Lucas understood. The ember in his hand wasn't just a piece of the flame. It was a spark that could rekindle what had been broken. But lighting the first keeper's wick would mean giving up the fire he carried. Giving up Emma. Anna's voice was barely a whisper. Lucas. Thomas placed a hand on his shoulder. Whatever you choose, we stand with you. Lucas closed his eyes. He thought of the lantern, of the countless keepers who had come before him, of the shadows that still lurked at the edges of the world, and of Emma, who had given everything to keep the flame alive. He stepped forward. The moment his ember touched the wick, the world erupted in light. Fire raced up the first keeper's arm, scouring away the centuries of decay, revealing the man beneath. A keeper, just like Lucas, his face lined with exhaustion and relief. The lanterns in his hands flared to life, their light spreading through the dead city like dawn breaking after an endless night. The mist dissolved, the ground steadied, and somewhere in the distance, the bell tolled one final time, not a warning but a welcome. Lucas stumbled back, his hand now empty, the ember gone, but the warmth remained, settled deep in his chest where Emma's presence had once been. Anna let out a shaky breath, her daggers lowering. Is it over? The first keeper, now just a man, his many arms reduced to two, his face whole again, smiled. No, but the balance is restored. Thomas exhaled, running a hand through his hair. So what now? Lucas looked down at his palm, where the faintest glow still lingered. Now we keep the light burning. The city around them was no longer a graveyard. The spires still stood tall, but color had returned. Faint, like a memory, but real. The air smelled of rain and earth instead of blood and ash. The first keeper placed a hand on Lucas's shoulder. The lanterns will need tending. The hungers will still prowl at the edges. His gaze shifted to Anna and Thomas. But you will not do it alone. Lucas nodded. He had lost much, but he had gained something. Too. A purpose, a family, a flame that would never truly die. As the three of them walked to the reborn city, the first true sunrise in centuries painted the sky in gold and crimson. And somewhere, in the space between heartbeats, Lucas could have sworn he heard Emma laugh. The end. Thank you for following this haunting journey. If you enjoyed A Lantern That Never Dies, be sure to subscribe, like, and follow for more chilling tales and dark adventures. The flame may fade, but the stories never end. Asterisk.